Good evening and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. First, I'd wait a motion to leave the non-public session and to seal the minutes of that session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Kelly, will you please take the roll?
Yes. Mayor McEachern,
Here.
Assistant Mayor Kelly,
Here.
Councilor Tabor,
Here.
Councilor Cook,
Here.
Councilor Denton,
Here.
Councilor Blaylock,
Present.
Councilor Bagley,
Here.
Councilor Moreau,
Here.
Councilor Lombardi.
Here.
Thank you, Kelly. Before we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd just like to call on two things to keep in our mind. First, the tragic event in Butler, Pennsylvania. It is abhorrent. Wish the former president well, and condolences to those that lost their life and everybody suffering as a result of that violence in Butler, Pennsylvania. It is a bad day for the United States. Second, I would like us to remember somebody for a moment of silence. Brigadier General Pogarek, who tragically lost his life recently. We sent a letter, and I'd like to read that letter to General Michaelides. On behalf of the City Council, City staff, and the entire City of Portsmouth, I extend my sincere condolences to the family of Brigadier General Pogarek on the tragic loss, far too soon, of a man who for decades has served his command, his state, country, and community with honor. His commitment and contributions to the more than 1,300 service members he so recently commanded at the Pease Air National Guard Base, and to those under his previous command of the 157th Air Refueling Wing and the 157th Operations Group, will not be forgotten. Our most heartfelt condolences go to his wife and 5 children. We understand that as a pilot, he amassed more than 6,300 flight hours. His logbook as a husband, father, friend, and colleague and commander will now hold the record of his skill and dedication for all he served for eternity. With our deepest sympathy. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight we have 2 proclamations. First, Plastic Pollution Reduction Month, who I've asked Councilor Cook to read.
Thank you, Your Honor. Whereas the City of Portsmouth declared itself an eco-municipality in 2007 and has passed both a citywide polystyrene ban and a city property single-use ordinances, and continues to encourage voluntary efforts by residents to reduce single-use plastic waste as part of Portsmouth's climate future. And whereas the Surfrider Foundation New Hampshire chapter has championed the effort for Portsmouth's restaurants and cafes to become certified ocean-friendly restaurants and to participate in the Skip the Stuff effort that encourages customers to ask for rather than being given food service accessories automatically that contribute to the expense and waste generated by discarding unwanted items. And whereas the City of Portsmouth wishes to reduce the significant pollution and health risks of the chain of plastic production by conserving resources, minimizing waste, reducing greenhouse gas emissions and other pollution, and protecting the welfare of our residents and wildlife, all of which contribute to the quality of life in Portsmouth. And whereas it is the intent of the city to reduce the negative impacts of plastic locally and to join in the international effort to reduce the pollution and public health risks related to plastic, now I, therefore, Kate Cook, on behalf of Daglin McEachern, the Mayor of the City of Portsmouth, and on behalf of the City Council, hereby proclaim July 2024 to be Plastic Pollution Reduction Month in Portsmouth, and encourage all citizens and businesses to reduce their plastic consumption and waste by choosing reusables and an opt-in versus opt-out model for single-use items. Given with the Mayor's hand and the seal of the City of Portsmouth on this 15th day of July 2024.
Thank you, Councilor Cook.
I'm going to give this to Peter Britz, who's our Planning and Sustainability Director, and thank him for his work on the Sustainability Committee.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Mayor.
Next, we have a more unusual proclamation partnered with the PTO Little Harbor to have a mayor for the day. I will say that for one day in Portsmouth, we had a fantastic mayor. This was a 10-year-old, and we worked on a proclamation. We also got to open the Pierce Island pool. This is just as the heat set in a little bit early, so got some ribbon in the scissors, and there was already people waiting in line. So it was a fun day. Hopefully some of the fun rubbed off in a civic way, but I was going to read the proclamation that Mayor Stubbs had created. Whereas wildlife is important in big ways and small, i.e. the quality of life we enjoy in Portsmouth, and whereas wildlife consists of animals we see every day, like geese, seagulls, fish, bugs, and squirrels, and those that remain hidden from view in Portsmouth, like alligators, and whereas each animal, seen and unseen, contributes to our overall ecosystem, and whereas Mayor Stubbs had made it his priority to protect and expand habitat for every creature. Now, therefore, I, Daigle McCachran, on behalf of Sage Stubbs, Mayor of the City of Portsmouth, on behalf of the members of the City Council and the citizens of Portsmouth, do hereby proclaim Wildlife Conservation Day in Portsmouth and urge all members of the community to take action in their lives to protect and improve the natural environment, given with my hand and the seal of the City of Portsmouth on this 20th day of June 2024, Sage Stubbs, Mayor of Portsmouth. All right, next up, acceptance of minutes. We've been busy, June 3rd and June 17th.
Your Honor, I move to approve and accept the minutes of the June 3rd, 2024 and June 17th, 2024 City Council meetings.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Next up, we are on to public comment. We will start with Roy Helsel, who has a topic of city traffic speed.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I have a problem with traffic speeding in this town. If you go down Islington Street, they got a sign when you come off of Middle Road, and it says 25 miles an hour. Well, down the road about 200 yards, there's a sign. There's a flashing light that says 25 miles an hour, and if they're doing 35 around that corner, they're going a little too fast. And coming back the other way, as soon as they go around that corner going out to Middle Road, they speed up. The same thing down Middle Road. This morning I was walking, it was about 7:30. There was a pickup truck coming down from 33 down to Middle Road. And he must have been doing about 45 miles an hour. And when I waved at him and told him to slow down, he sped up. And when he got down almost to the overpass, there was a car, I guess, pulled out. He had to slam on his brakes because he almost hit it. The other day, coming up Middle Street, car was coming over the overpass, and a lady, she sat there and pushed the button, and it started flashing. She looks up the road, and the cars are slowing down. She steps off, and the car was going so fast it went by her, in front of her, after she stepped off, and I thought it was going to hit her. I couldn't get the license number because it was going too fast. But they use this place, all the roads, they go too fast. I go drive, when I pull out of where I live, by the time they come down from the little church, they're on my tail already. And when I go 25 miles an hour, like it says, I've had 2 times that people have passed me on the double yellow line because they're in a hurry. If you turn off any of the streets, the side streets that says 20 miles an hour, the excessive speed is, you can ask anyone in any neighborhood roads. They're going too fast through the neighborhoods. And if they don't do something pretty soon about it, we're going to have a lot more accidents around here. They think this is a Route 1 highway, all these main streets. Islington is bad, Middle Road is bad, Middle Street is bad. And when I went across South Street, coming down here to City Hall, it's 20 miles an hour. There's not a car that goes 20 miles an hour except if they're behind me. And then they turn around there, I have to put my emergency lights on so that they don't run into my back end if I hit the brakes. So I don't hit the brakes, I just pull my emergency lights off, then they'll back off a little bit. And then they turn around there and want me to speed up. That's all I have to say. They have to do something about it.
Thank you, Roy. Next up, Sue Bonadora on the topic of HDC.
Good evening, Sue Polidora, Middle Street, and I'm here to talk about the HDC and their responsibility to issue the certificates for any kind of changes or construction that happen within the historic district. By definition, I'm looking at the city ordinance. The historic district is established to preserve the architectural and historic resources of the city of Portsmouth, to foster its architectural and historic character and a sense of place, to conserve property values, to strengthen the local community, and to promote the use of the district for education, pleasure, and welfare of the citizens and visitors. That's pretty much aligned with the definition that the RSA in the state also issues to them. Now, as far as the certificates, the city ordinance and the RSA both agree. RSA 674-46, that the certificates will be issued by the historic district. It doesn't say that it will be issued by someone within the planning department, someone other than the Historic District Commission. The same thing is, that's RSA 676-8-10. Please take legal notice of this, because it will go in against the RSAs, which is in essence violating the state law. Now, on the ordinance, section 10-630 of the Historic District, 631-10, in following numbers also say that the issuer certificates have to originate with the historic district. It doesn't say that it has to be moved or originate in the planning department. Taking that away from the Historic District Commission means that we're not abiding by the RSA, and that's important for you to know. So to avoid future issues by just leaving things the way they are and leaving this responsibility within the Historic District Commission to be overseers of. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Next up, Esther Kennedy on the topic of Portsmouth.
Esther Kennedy, 41 Pickering Ave. First, I'd like to comment on the fact that I solely believe in what Roy is saying. I have said a long time, for every city road, it should be just 25 miles an hour. Be really clean, clear, everyone could know it, there would be no questions. I know state has their own rules. I also want to agree with Sue. We only have 2.2% of our city is a historical district. Yet it is on every map, every picture of not only of Portsmouth, but also the state. Please do not destroy it. Lastly, I come before you because on July 2nd, I went to the dump and I was told that because I had a half a truck full of wood, I needed to pay $15. What was sad about that was poor Fran was having to tell other people who no one knew. No one knew about the change. It didn't go in front of the fees committee. You did not follow your own rules. It did not go anywhere publicly. We've all looked. I know Monty put stuff up. I get it on Facebook. I know he gets it. There was nothing said about the fact that there was going to be increases in the dump. How hard is it to put a sign up to say it was going to be increases in dump? Now, I understand There probably needs to be increases in the dump. But the way you did it was crap. And poor Fran and the rest of the people up there took the heat. Because he had to come up to people that were hot and tired from loading their vehicles or putting their little greens in their vehicles and say, here's what you need to pay me. And here's a new list of what. That was July 2nd and went into effect July 1st. I see a sign when I walk in here that you need employees. And I'll be honest with you, if that wasn't such a kind man, you'd probably need another employee. It was sad. And you, as managers of the city, let it happen. No communication. People were showing up there. They didn't have a checkbook with them. They were trying to give cash. They couldn't get cash. And one of our other city people came up to me and said, Esther, what's sad is you have to pay the same amount for your small truck as someone with a bigger truck. Because there's no one there making a decision. So I ask you, it should have gone through the fees committee, like everything that we do. And I ask you in the future, put a sign up in front of the dump and explain that we're going to have an increase in fees. And make sure that poor Fran and the rest of the group does not have to do this. And then maybe we'll be nice to our employees and keep them. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Next up, Paige Trace, also on the topic of Portsmouth.
Good evening, Mayor McEachran, members of the City Council, Paige Trace, 27 Hancock Street. This is the night of the waste transfer station, commonly referred to and thought of lovingly as the dump. Now, it is pretty sad when the one part of Portsmouth that is old Portsmouth and fun to go to is the dump. It's pretty sad when you get a smile on your face because they're thoughtful enough that they have 2 giraffes eating out of a box of dog biscuits. It brings a smile to your face when you're hot and tired and you don't really want to be there, but it's kind of fun until it's not. Until you start charging for people that are just nice, normal people who don't have the awareness of the fact that you changed your fee structure. You didn't tell them. You may have told yourselves, but you didn't even do that because you didn't take it to the fee committee. Generally speaking, I think that's what you're supposed to do. But you didn't quite get it there, did you? You were so busy increasing fees at the dump. What is it? You don't want people to smile at the giraffes, have a good time, laugh? You know, I get that you have to charge for certain things, but at least give people in this city a certain amount of time to understand that you're going to be increasing your fees. And as to everything else, I would implore you to think about the, I don't know how many of you are old enough, but let's talk about I Love Lucy. And there was a wonderful I Love Lucy where she was in Italy and she was stomping on grapes with Ethel. And they were going round and round in a bucket. And I implore you to put that in the back of your mind when we get to F in the public hearings. You just keep thinking about Ethel and Lucy going around stomping on grapes. And with that, I'll leave you and say thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Paige. Next up, Peter Huda on the topic of the HDC.
Good evening, Peter Huda, 280 South Street. I will again remind you of what Sue reminded you of why we have the HDC. And one of the reasons that I will do that is I attended the 6-5 Historic District Commission meeting, and I find it very concerning that the counselor sitting on that committee does not know the purpose of the committee. I will state, quote, quote, "This is what they need. This is what they are asking for. It's just a view of a solar panel. We are supposed to help take care of our residents and nonprofits and be willing to work with them." No, that is not the objective of the HDC, according to our ordinances and according to state law. The Historic District is established to preserve the historic architecture and historic resources of Portsmouth. I'd also call to your attention, just like Sue did, of the mission statement of the Historic District Commission in their rules and procedures to review exterior changes to buildings and structures within the historic district. This is 2.2% of the city. I live in the historic district. I had to deal with what they put forward. Why should people have a change and come forward and put this forward now, and residents can't do the same? The same night you had a building downtown with solar panels totally approved. Number 1 Congress Street had a change. Why were those solar panels approved? They were not visible. I still do not understand who is going to define minimally visible, and if it's going to continue the historic district bashing that we're seeing from every developer that is coming forward now. In the last week, we have read in the paper, every developer has come and bashed the historic district. Is this the way you want to do business in the historic district? Is this what you want? Because you're opening the door for everybody to come in and complain. Think about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. Seeing no other listed or
Going to ask if there's anyone on Zoom.
anybody on Zoom, and we do.
Okay.
Bill Downey, floor is yours. I think we got to press.
Yep, Kevin will,
Oh, Kevin's going to
unmute it.
manage that.
Are we good, Mayor?
Yep.
Loud and clear, Bill.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to address my comments, 2 comments to the city attorney. First of all, thank you very much for holding the line when it comes to the Times building. I think it was the HDC's finest hour that they actually required that to be preserved. I find it to be one of the most appealing and enjoyable buildings in the city. It was structurally authorized by Jeff Naraki back in the day, years ago, that it was structurally okay to preserve. And I take great exception with the argument from the owner and his attorney to say it's the city's responsibility. What a projection of responsibility. They knew damn well what they're required to do. If it is compromised, it's only due to their own neglect. So I just, again, want to say thank you. I hope you continue to hold the line. And the second point I'd like to make is that in regards to the solar panels, I would ask the city attorney, I know it's not legislated or authorized to require someone to recuse themselves, but I think there's 2 counselors that have conflicts of interest. That'd be Counselor Tabor with the St. John's Church, very fine people, as well as the good people from the Ferry Landing, and Counselor Blaylock. I think Counselor Blaylock was quoted in the paper saying the Ferry Landing could be susceptible to higher water, and therefore I think there's a direct conflict of interest. I'm not sure if Counselor Tabor is still on the executive committee, or forgive me, Counselor, whatever committee name you have there, but I know you're considered an executive of a board, or at least you were. So I think it's really important as a council that you take it seriously and consider whether there is a conflict of interest, because if you don't, it ends up almost similar to the Supreme Court, where it's just willy-nilly, to be damned, we're going to do it our way. And Councillor Cook, for a long time, I heard you speak passionately about good governance. Well, this is an opportunity to maybe share some wisdom, some encouragement to do the right thing. Because if you don't, you just lack credibility. So again, thank you again for all your work with the Times building, and I hope moving forward on the reading that the two councilors will consider what I just said. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Any other speakers on Zoom? Oh. All right. Seeing none, we will move on to the public hearings and vote on ordinances and resolutions. We have first reading of ordinance, proposed ordinance amending Chapter 10, Article 5A, Character-Based Zoning, Section 10.5A 43.33 regarding building and story heights of the zoning ordinance.
Would you like the summary?
Should we put the motion on the table first?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I move we pass first reading and schedule a public hearing and second reading to be held at the August 5th, 2024 City Council meeting.
Second.
Go ahead. So just as a reminder, at the June 3rd City Council meeting, staff brought forward and recommended amendment to Article 5A, Character-Based Zoning, Section 10.5A 43.33, seeking clarification from the council on the original intent of this zoning amendment, which was adopted originally back in August of 2023. And this amendment pertains to properties that contain at least 1 acre in size and are located within CD4, CD4W, and CD5, the character-based zoning districts, and not located within an incentive overlay district. So these properties, through a conditional use permit, may add a story of up to 15 feet in height, duplex or house building type, or a mixed-use building in exchange for providing 50% community space and workforce housing. As currently written, the language could be interpreted to allow the incentive of an extra story for a mixed-use development without residential units by providing only the community space requirement and no workforce housing. And at your June meeting, the council affirmed its intent that it should have this additional workforce housing, and both are to be provided, and so this amendment is what is being brought forward for you tonight. And I will say the planning board did hold its public hearing on June 20th, 2024, and they did not receive any public comment on the amendment. And so the board approved the amendment that clarified the ordinance consistent with the council's intent.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager. Any discussion on this? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Next up, first reading of proposed parking omnibus ordinance amending Chapter 7, Article 3, Traffic Ordinance, Section 7.330A, no parking, Article 3, Traffic Ordinance, Section 7.341, driving on sidewalk, and Article 11, Section 7.1100E, speed limits 25 miles per hour, Middle Street.
Your Honor, I move to pass first reading and schedule a public hearing and second reading to be held at the August 5th, 2024 City Council meeting.
Second.
Any discussion on the omnibus? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, on to public hearings. Adoption of resolution. We have resolution authorizing a bond issue and/or notes of the city under the Municipal Finance Act of up to $650,000 for costs related to school facilities capital improvement. Is there a presentation on this one this evening?
There is no presentation on the bond resolutions. However, the Deputy Finance Director, Andrew Pergel, is here, as well as Nathan Lunny, our Deputy City Manager for Finance and Business Administration, and they are both here to answer any questions that you have. You have the resolutions along with all the CIP element sheets in your packet.
Any questions of the council? Seeing none, we'll open the, was there a question?
I did have a question.
Oh, okay.
So, under the resolution, there's money set to go to the schools for paving, and I'm wondering if that paving will be in accordance with a new city policy that the conduit for future EV charging be laid down.
And Mayor, the Deputy City Manager, Nathan Lunny, is available to answer that question.
Good evening.
It's a great question. The answer is yes. The detail is the project is multi-year funded, multi-year implemented. We are just now going to enter the design phase. We'll be considering pedestrian safety, revising traffic flows. So as a part of the design planning, we'll take into account where EV charging might best be located, and then conduits will be included. But I don't know in which of the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, depending on how long this process takes. The high school property won't be done in one summer. It will be done piecemeal. So I don't know when that will happen. It'll depend on when we tackle the area in which those would be located.
Awesome. Thank you.
Councillor Cook and then the Assistant Mayor.
Thank you, Your Honor. I had a follow-up question to that one. I know that the funding is not provided in the CIP budget for a solar array above the parking lot at the high school, but is there an opportunity to explore that in the design phase?
Again, I would say absolutely. That comment's been offered up before. The internet has given us some great examples. Oyster River at their middle school gave us another cool example. Where it would best fit, how many, how much, still remains to be discussed. And then if the implementation of that would be the lottery to decide who would get to park under the one or more that we actually could construct. So it certainly will be a part of that design discussion.
Thank you.
Assistant Mayor.
Thank you. One more question. As we are looking at that high school, I would hope that we are taking consideration that the probability in the next few years, our CTE is due for between the Department of Education and their 20-year cycle, and just the state of the CTE, that building is going to go under, I would assume, some heavy renovation. And so as we're looking at the back side and the entry port, as we're looking through the phase of this program, that we just make sure we take that into heavy consideration.
And there certainly is the potential for some facility expansion to meet the needs of new programming that may come around, and so that will be part of the consideration as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions before I open the public hearing? Opening the public hearing. Anyone speaking to, for, or against on the public or on the resolution for the school's facilities capital improvements in the amount of $650,000? Seeing no one rise, I will close the public hearing. Any additional council questions or deliberations?
Your Honor, I motion to adopt the resolution as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions? Kelly, will you please take a roll call vote?
Yes. Assistant Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Councilor Tabor?
Yes.
Councilor Cook?
Yes.
Councilor Denton?
Yes.
Councilor Blaylock?
Yes.
Councilor Bagley?
Yes.
Councilor Moreau?
Yes.
Councilor Lombardi?
Yes.
Mayor McEachran?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Next up is the public hearing adoption of resolution authorizing a bond issue and/or notes of the city under the Municipal Finance Act of up to $12,925,000 for costs related to the ambulance replacement program, police deficiencies and repair project, land acquisition, South Mill Pond Playground, additional outdoor recreation fields, Prescott Park Master Plan implementation, citywide facilities capital improvements, Greenleaf Avenue sidewalk, Russell Market intersection upgrade, Fleet Street utilities upgrade and streetscape, citywide storm drainage improvements, and the Crick neighborhood reconstruction. There is no presentation, but are there any questions of the council? Councilor Lombardi.
I noticed that there are items under this public hearing and then following public hearing for the same projects. Is that because some of it is coming under the enterprise funds?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Good question, Councilor Lombardi. Any other questions? We will now open it up for public hearing speakers. To, for, against, please rise.
Petri Huda, 280 South Street. So I have quite a few questions. Since this is a public hearing, I'm going to hit them all in the order you have them. My first question involves the Police Deficiency and Repair Project. Now, this is the third or fourth year that they're asking for $400,000 for mitigation and repairs. What is totally missing from anything here and has not been bonded for is anything that has to do with the new police station. So I'm going to call to your attention both the FY23 CAFR on page 78 and the budget book on page 158. And basically, this is bond authorizations that haven't been issued. That means they have been authorized, but they're sitting there waiting to be issued. And there is a time limitation on this, in case you're interested. So, in going over the budget book, the 1.4 that was authorized for the study, the feasibility study in FY22, is still authorized and unissued. But page 160 shows that $200,000 were authorized for the new police station feasibility study last year. In going and reviewing last year's request by the city manager, there is no $200,000 in there. So my first question is, where did you take the money out of? Is it being taken out of the repair program for the police department? And the next question is, you say right in the spec sheet that 2.8 was authorized, but it was not authorized. There is absolutely zero amount in the budget for the police station at this time. So hopefully somebody has some questions up there about what's going on with this, since you have committees working on this. I know we're going to have an update at the end of this, which would have been great if it was a little forward so we had an idea as residents what's going on here. But it's kind of concerning that we were told that this was moving forward. We have established committees and we're working on this and doing plans and paying bills. The only thing that was authorized on this was $180,000, and that's coming right out of our books. So that's a big question in my mind. The next thing, since I don't know anything else about the plans for the police station, I'm going to refer back to what you had previously, because that also has to do with bonding that is being requested here. So the last design we saw on page 12 of the external design, monies added into the police station for retaining walls, paving of parking areas, reconstructing of driveways and sidewalks. Now, this is public works and is included in the general fund back as unauthorized and unissued from, we have $950,000 from FY18, and we have $4,775,000 from FY19. So my big question here would be, why are you adding this in to the police station when we have money in the general fund that is being requested? Also, FY20 and FY24, the bonding request for sidewalks was $800,000, and for streets and pavings was $4 million. So again, why should this be part of the design when you're already requesting money, having money requested out of public works for these designs? Next thing I'd like to talk to you about is the question on Russell and Market Street upgrade. My question is, why are we asked to bond $365,000 when the state's money won't come in till next year? Why are we bonding ahead of time when we don't even know if that's going to be in the schedule? Something else for you to think about. I think that's it for this. Land acquisition. This is the second year we're asking for $500,000. The last year's amount is still sitting in there. We haven't seen any of that spent. So it's authorized and unissued. So those are some questions that I hope the council will ask before bonding. This is only second reading, so you do have a chance to get some answers.
Thank you, Petra.
Esther Kennedy, 41 Pickering Ave, and I agree with everything Petra has stated. I've also reviewed it. My concern is, how do you explain to the public that we are looking at giving land away and we're putting money in to buy it? And I think that is something that you folks need to explain. You know, I look at fields, we're taking away a field. So I would ask, like Peter was saying, it's been in there and it hasn't been spent. Why are we adding for land acquisition and also giving it away? The taxes are going up, folks. We all got our water bill with a little note saying, as of August 1st, it is going up. Our sewer bill is going up. So I guess you're going to have to really, I hope, you really look at what is in this financial act and make sure that you understand it and really decide what's important here. You know, it's been interesting this last couple of weeks with all the new people moving here and whatnot, and the people that are here under J1s and the people that are kids that are trying to find a place. And there's like nothing because some of your landlords are raising the prices. And they're raising the prices because you're raising the price. So I would ask you, if you truly want affordable living in Portsmouth, it starts with this kind of stuff. And what are you going to give up so that we can keep the tax rate down? And this is easy money because it goes out there and sits out there and then all of a sudden it's spent. So it might not affect the most current budget, but will affect other budgets. And you need to look at that. It's up to you right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Any other speakers, to, for, or against? Any on Zoom? Seeing none, closing the public hearing. Any additional council questions or deliberations? Councilor Bagley.
Thanks, Your Honor. A couple of questions. In regards to the land acquisition, my understanding, at least since I've been on the council and prior to that, the vast majority of the land that we acquire is to do with the Bellamy Reservoir, which is land outside of the city of Portsmouth. Is that accurate, or is that?
We certainly have made some acquisitions outside of the city of Portsmouth to protect our primary water source. I believe, and maybe Peter Britz can speak to this, what we're talking about, though, is land acquisition for conservation purposes. And while we don't have a particular property in mind, there are some ongoing discussions, and we're always looking for conservation property to acquire within the city of Portsmouth.
Mayor, members of the City Council, yeah, this is specific to the Conservation Fund and keeping that fund funded so that we have the ability. The situation in Portsmouth is we have to be ready to acquire properties when they come up, and having this authorization will make that ability more possible. So if someone has a piece of property they want to sell right away, they go so fast in Portsmouth that we want to be able to have that money available. There is a project underway right now that will be put into conservation protection and will likely require a pretty significant contribution. We'll tell you more about it when we have more details, but the Conservation Commission also has a subcommittee looking at conservation lands throughout the city, and they're interested in protecting more lands to provide these lands ongoing. We need the fund to be active. So,
Okay, thank you. And the other question I had was about I still have concerns about the Prescott Park, the expenditures. I think, when the Prescott Park Master Plan was created, we had a revenue source for it. That revenue source has actually turned into a large deficit. Is it possible, and I'm guessing it's not, to separate that from the rest of the bond issuance?
I believe we can, but if you do you want to respond to how that would impact? And I know, Peter, I think this is your element.
So let's have Andrew speak, or Deputy Finance Director Andrew Pergel speak to the impact to bonding for separating out two different bonds? distinct
We would
bonds?
have to, right, good evening, Andrew Pergel, Deputy Finance Director. We would have to rewrite the resolution, take the money out, and I think you would have to post it if you're going to list another one. I don't know if you'd have to repost the other one, if you change, yes, Kelly's saying you would have to repost the whole thing.
Okay, that answers my question, but I do have a follow-up. When we have this many items under a bond issuance, and for whatever reason, one of these items, we don't need the money for, say, a couple of years, we don't issue one bond for this full amount, or do we?
Correct. So we authorize it, and authorizations do not expire. So we have one from a long time ago for the Coke. It's whatever. It's sitting there. If anything ever happened, we have an authorization. So those don't expire. This whole list of projects, if you don't do like one of them, let's say it's a $400,000 out of the $10 million list. We would issue $9.6 million. The $400,000 would still sit there authorized. We have 2 years to spend the money once we bond it. So we wait, we talk to Public Works, what's the cash flow going to be on this? You know, like the police thing that was brought up. We had an authorization of 1.4. We issued 300,000 of that to get the process going. We just issued another 200,000 of that, so we've issued 500 of that 1.4 original authorization. So we still have 900,000 authorized. Then on the list, there was another 2.8 that we haven't authorized yet because, you know, it's still in a process. And the big project we didn't bring forward because we're not close to even thinking about that number. So out of the original authorization of 1.4, we're sitting on 900,000 that hasn't been used. We have issued $500,000 worth of bonds so we can go through the process to design and preliminary design.
So, Andrew, Andrew Pergel, in the specific to the Prescott Park master plan, that's authorizations for maybe Director Rice would like to speak to what specifically those authorizations are going towards.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
And then we can get back to options if we don't want to support the entire master plan implementation, which I know.
No, I'm okay with it now. I just wanted to make sure. It was more of it occurred to me in the meeting. I wonder if that's even something we could do type question.
All right.
I'm happy to speak to it if so desire.
For the purpose of just reminding everybody what this money is being authorized for.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Councilors. Peter Rice, Director of Public Works. The $4.5 million is identified to protect the historic buildings as well as provide drainage on Water Street area as well as through the Performance Lawn area. The general approach has been adjusted based on input from City Council to focus more on the current configuration of the Shaw building, but bringing it up and protecting it. We're also looking at the Players Ring building because if you raise one, you know, the others, they're both historic buildings and they both need to be protected. So the intent would be to use those monies to protect those structures, improve the drainage in the area, as well as Water Street.
Thank you. And then just kind of with what Director Rice said and what Mr. Pergel said, you know, we're giving you permission to issue these bonds and use these monies. However, it doesn't mean you have to, because through the logistics, you're not going to be able to do it all at once. So over the next couple of years, you'll issue them when they're needed, as needed. And then that's why we do the bond rescind every once in a while, because it's been determined that we don't actually need the funds.
Correct.
But they're still kind of hanging out there where you could issue them, but the project's finished or what have you. So I guess it might sound a little confusing to people at home, but we're basically just giving you permission tonight. We're not really issuing any bonds tonight.
That's correct.
Any other questions? Councilor Denton.
Just to follow up on Councilor Bagley's question regarding the land acquisition, and this is a question for Andrew. Am I correct that although there's $500,000 from prior bonding out there, we could still bond more and add to it to make the amount of money available for land acquisition larger.
Yeah, good evening again. So last year's the 500,000 is authorized. It's not tied to a specific piece of land, but it's authorized. If it comes up, you can spend the 500. This 500 is totally separate from that one. So now if you pass this one, now you have $1 million. So if you get $1 million project, you could use both of them, and you just have $1 million after tonight.
Thank you.
But it's not bonded. We're holding this. Like, let's say you don't have a project, but in March you get one, and it's $1 million, and you had this authorized. We'll issue that in June, and we'll have our cash. And we will borrow from ourselves from March to June, bond it in June. The authorization is now used, and now we have a bond of $1 million.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we will have a roll call vote on.
I get the motion.
Oh, sorry.
I made the motion. Your Honor, I'll move to adopt the resolution as presented.
Your Honor, because I'm in my last year as chair of the board of the Arts Festival, as I've consistently done, I'm going to recuse myself because I have a fiduciary role with the Arts Festival, which conflicts with my city role on this.
And was there a second?
Second.
Okay, we will have a roll call vote. If there's no other questions or comments, okay, roll call vote.
Assistant Mayor Kelly?
Yes?
Counselor Tabor is abstaining. Counselor Cook?
Yes.
Counselor Denton?
Yes.
Counselor Blaylock?
Yes.
Counselor Bagley?
Yes.
Counselor Moreau?
Yes.
Counselor Lombardi?
Yes.
Mayor McEachran?
Yes.
Passes 8-0.
Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome.
Next up, public hearing adoption of resolution authorizing a bond issue and/or notes of the city under the Municipal Finance Act and/or participation in the State Revolving Fund SRF loan of up to $4,050,000 related to water storage tanks improvements, Madbury Water Treatment Plant facility repair and improvements, Fleet Street Utilities upgrade and streetscape, DPW complex improvements, and the Crick neighborhood reconstruction. No presentation, but are there questions of the council? Seeing none, we will open the public hearing. Please speak to or against the bond resolution that is before the council.
Esther Kennedy, 41 Pickering Ave, and mine is more of a question. I was wondering if at any point or where we are at for the pipes that go across the Great Bay. I was looking for something here about that. I know you fixed the valves. I know it came in overpriced. I also know that project came in overpriced, much more than what expectation. But I think it's really important to think about that. They're very old. They're our water source for our city. And I don't see anything in here. I'm just wondering where we're at, and I'm hoping that you are processing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Any other questions or any other speakers?
Pete Huda, 280 South Street. I'll just speak on the same thing that Esther just hit on the Great Bay water lines. We bonded authorized 7.3. According to bid number 2224, we had main valve improvements only. The contract was awarded to SIR Construction, and the cost was only $2,180,400. So my question to you, and to hopefully you'll ask, is where's the rest of the money and what's going to be spent for? This is still listed as in the budget book as authorized unissued. So basically, if it's unissued, how did we pay for it? The other thing I'd like to impress upon you, and I would ask that the city attorney remind the deputy finance director of municipal budget law number 32. Section 32.7A, appropriations for capital projects. In addition to other appropriation authority and notwithstanding any other provisions of law, the legislative body may appropriate the money. Appropriated funds for a term beyond one fiscal year, but shall not exceed 5 years as follows. Number one, the appropriation shall only be for the identified project as described in the article authorizing the appropriation, for which it would be lawful to issue a bond under RSA 33.3 or 33.3C. The article authorizing the appropriation shall state the term of years of the appropriation, total amount appropriation, and the amount to be appropriated for the term. For each year after that, the amount designated shall be in the paragraph and shall be appropriated only by the legislative body. If the amount is not spent during the year, the unexpended amount shall not lapse, but shall be available for expenditure in certain years of the term, provided that the amounts do not lapse at the end of the term, which is 5 years. I would appreciate if that would be explained to the council and Mr. Purgle.
Thank you, Petra. Any questions on the bond issuance before us? Councilor Cook.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just have a question on the Fleet Street utilities upgrade and streetscape. I'm curious as to the status of that project. I know that the changes for what the streetscape would ultimately look like haven't come back to the council yet, but I see that we're bonding, so I wanted to see if we could get a quick update so we know exactly what we're bonding.
Did you close the public hearing?
Oh, I didn't. Anybody on Zoom? Seeing none, closing the public hearing. Thank you, Councilor Moreau.
So maybe we could have the city engineer come up and just give an update on the Fleet Street project.
Hi, I'm Eric Fiedler, city engineer. In terms of updates for Fleet Street project, we've submitted our environmental permitting for the outfall, which is the first phase of the project. The Vaughn Mall, Upper Congress area, that's progressing towards 60% design. At this point, we've firmed up sort of the locations for the utility routing and stuff like that. But in terms of the restoration and some of those things, that's going to be for kind of further discussion, I think, because there's a lot of factors there. We're trying to make sure that we have the corridors in place so that we don't disrupt businesses. So there's a bunch of factors in terms of impacts to the vegetation there, the surface treatments, and then basically business access during construction. So we're kind of going towards that 60% design. Our consultant is progressing pretty well, and I think we have I'm trying to remember like the actual tentative schedule, but we're in the process, so there's been a bunch of back and forth. And that's why we bonded early too. So we received a little bit of state funding for that, so the SRF money, so there's some forgiveness as well as low interest loans. And the money's available this year, and we're trying to progress it due to basically recent condition assessments with the surface treatments as well as the infrastructure as well. So it made a lot of sense to try to bond it a little early, make sure we locked in that extra funding, because it's not always guaranteed. If we waited till next year to do the applications, we might not have all been there, is our understanding. So that's why we're progressing it, and we're also trying to accelerate the process just because of the infrastructure condition and that type of thing. So it's one of those, it was going to be sequential. We were going to do the outfall, then we're going to do the Vaughn Mall Upper Congress area, but we tried to truncate the process by kind of sequencing things in parallel. So that's sort of where we're at, and yeah, we'll come back. I think definitely the surface treatments are going to be a big one. I think that's a lot of community input is going to be necessary in that. So, and I think the consultant team, has we have a landscape architect and other folks involved on that. So there's going to be we'll have lots of good visuals and other renderings. So.
Okay. Thank you. I had one quick follow-up.
Thank you, Eric.
So do we anticipate utility upgrades starting, say, next summer at the earliest? I'm just curious about impact to that downtown area.
Yeah, so 60%, then at the earliest type thing. I think that's kind of the reality of it. It takes some time to get the progression through there. And then the uncertainty is the restoration on the surface treatment. So I guess depending on how that goes, do we try to do an intermediate kind of get the utilities in place, and then have a further discussion in parallel with that. So that would sort of dictate the schedule. So it's hard to say it's a firm one, because it's an important area, and we want to make sure we do it justice and do our due diligence with the community. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Any other questions?
Your Honor, I move to adopt the resolution as presented.
Second?
Seeing no further questions, Kelly, would you please take a roll call vote?
Yes, Mayor. Assistant Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Tabor?
Yes.
Counselor Cook?
Yes.
Counselor Denton?
Yes.
Counselor Blaylock?
Yes.
Counselor Bagley?
Yes.
Counselor Moreau?
Yes.
Counselor Lombardi?
Yes.
Mayor McEachran?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Next up, public hearing, adoption of resolution authorizing a bond issue and/or of notes of the city under the Municipal Finance Act and/or participation in the State Revolving Fund SRF loan of up to $35,465,000 for costs related to P's wastewater treatment facility, wastewater pumping station improvements, sewer service funding for Sagamore Avenue sewer extension, Mechanic Street pumping station upgrade, Pierce Island wastewater treatment facility, Fleet Street utilities upgrade and streetscape, citywide storm drainage improvements, DPW complex improvements, and the Crick neighborhood reconstruction. With no presentation, we will have council questions for the public hearing. Councilor Moreau?
I just want to, after reading our very lengthy hazard mitigation plan that's been drafted in our packet, I want to make sure that, especially with the Mechanic Street pump station, since that was specifically brought up in that the changes that these monies are going for are going to take all of that into consideration as far as what will need to be done.
I can answer that, and yes, we are very cognizant of the need to make some substantive changes in terms of how we locate or relocate, in fact, that facility in order to make sure we're dealing with the future and the present, frankly, given the flooding.
Any other questions? We'll now open the public hearing to speak to, for, or against any of the items on this bond issue and/or notes.
Again, Petra Huda, 280 South Street. So the first question I'd like to ask, and I'd hope that one of you can explain it to the public. The increase on the Fleet Street utilities in sewer by $6 million. Now, I went back and I listened to the explanation by the city manager, and according to what she's saying, if I understand it correctly, it's because we are going to put in for a grant to help with this work. So my question is, since we know how grants go and you can get it and you can't get it, why is the city increasing our bonding amount for that amount? I don't understand. If a counselor or anybody can explain it to me, that would be great. The next thing is the Pease wastewater treatment facility. This is $20 million. So if you go back and look at your authorized unissued, we authorized and we still have unissued $1.5 million from FY21. We authorized $550,000 for design in FY23. So if I look at this, I don't know if you have seen a design. I would really like to know if a council has seen a design. It hasn't been discussed in public. So since we don't have a design for this and we don't have a design completed for the police facility, please explain to me why we would want to bond this ahead of time before we even have a design. In the request for this, it basically says this is a request for cost to design and construct. So what are we constructing if we don't have a design? And why is this different than the police station? So the next thing I would like to talk to you about is something that I came across that is concerning that is in here that you are going to bond again for. And this is sewer service funding for Sagamore Creek Extension. Now, I understand that this is for everybody else, but when I was looking for the $4.4 million for the consent decree, this was authorized way back in FY21. This was rescinded by the city manager on 4/19/21. If you don't believe me, I don't make this stuff up. I have the sheet in front of me that says we rescinded the whole amount for water. I have gone back through all the requests from the city manager for bonding again, and I do not see anywhere where the 4.4 was authorized. So something for you to look at and think about as you're moving through this. Next thing I'd like to talk to you about is the amount for Pierce Island. So in the request for Pierce Island, we're asking for another 1.9 for FY25 funds for a third inclined screw press for sludge dewatering. So, councilors, rumor has it that the other two inclined screw presses are down, and the sludge is being moved to Pease. Can you please confirm that fact? I have heard a lot about a certain stench going through town, and the other thing I'd like to ask is, we bonded and we spent 1.16 last time. Is that spent, or are we still using it for this? So I guess most of these would be Peter questions, and the amount for Pease is very large, and moving to authorize $20 million before you have a design is kind of like putting the horse before the cart, which you're not doing with the police station. So I don't understand how you can move forward on this without having a design. And the same thing with Fleet Street. To change $6 million, you went through the process. The process was correct, but I do not understand why we have to bond for something we're putting in for a grant for. And if any of you can explain it to me, that would be great. I think that's all I have on that. There's some big questions here to be answered. Big money. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra.
Good evening. Paige Trace, 27 Hancock Street. I'm going to quote from the city's website. Sludge is removed from the primary clarifiers, then thickened using a gravity thickener and stored in tanks. The stored thickened sludge is dewatered using a rotary press and then deposited at a landfill. So you're bonding for money for a third press to create more consistency in, for lack of a better word, deflowering whatever you've got up there in the way of heinous sewage. But the fact of the matter is, lately, the South End has had an odorific smell to it. And Big Bertha, as we coined her many years ago, has been seen going back and forth between Pierce Island and Pease all day long and all night long. So the question is, you want to bond for money for a third press to make more consistency. The question is, where is the transparency, and are people actually correct that both sludge presses at the moment have problems? So yes, indeed, you might need a third press at some point, but where are you going to put it? On top of one of the middens? I think that you already are at capacity out at Pierce Island. So there's a lot of discussion that should be had about the transparency of the situation out there after $92 million was spent. Now, I remember a long time ago, I sat in a courtroom and I listened to a very esteemed person by the name of Judge Barbara Doro state that he found for the city, the state, and the federal government, because a group of plaintiffs couldn't prove a future fault, that they couldn't act and decide on something that might happen in the future. I contend that the future is now. And I wonder if the EPA knows just what's going on out at Pierce Island after $92 million. And it would be very nice if we could have clarification about the 2 existing screw presses and what the money is being intended for, because I have confirmation right here back in 2023, you were asking for, it was discussed that it would actually cost about $4.9 million a year ago for a new screw press, a third one. So maybe we could have some clarification from Mr. Rice. I also have a question for you regarding the outfall from Fleet Street. Because I wonder, is Fleet Street still combined? And will that be the 4th outfall that the city will have in times of emergencies? Deer Street, 10A, 10B, and now Fleet Street outfall into North Mill Pond? That's charming. Does the EPA know about that? There are all sorts of things that go on in this city, and I ask you to just stop for a minute, take a deep breath, and think about what you're doing. Because I still remember that day when we were told by the feds in the state that you couldn't act on a future problem, but you can act on a current problem. So I ask you to think long and hard about where you're going to put the 3rd screw press and whether we need it there or whether we need to do something more at Pease. Thank you.
Thank you, Paige. Any other speakers?
Esther Kennedy, 41 Pickering Ave. When you look at this budget, I have to ask, because we were told with the 92 million, then add a couple more for what happened recently, that was going to take care of it. Our sewage treatment plant was going to last 50 years. It was going to be top of the line, and it was going to take care of what we had for a population. We're going with another sludge press, and there is question about the sludge press and are they working, because it has been very smelly this summer. When you go out on the water, if anyone would like to go for a boat ride, I'll be more than happy to take it. You can smell it off the front of the plant as well as the sides. So something's going on. So tonight, I saw the zoning. I see the fact that this council is asking for more building. And I have to ask, with all the millions you're spending on sewage, are we already at capacity? And I've not heard one of you ask that question. What is our capacity and are we there? Paige is absolutely right. We sat in the same courtroom. And the judge was really clear. He agreed with some of the stuff we were saying. However, we needed to see what was going to happen once all this was put in place. Well, it's now put in place. The company that put it in place is no longer in existence. And we are finding now that beaches are being closed down. The effluent is very stinky, and that we're looking at new sludge press. I ask you to dig deeper as our counselors. Ask more questions. Don't just sit here and say yes, vote yes. Figure it out, find out about it, and really investigate. Do your due diligence. This is a lot of money. This is millions and millions and millions of dollars that you are spending. You're going to be known as a council of spending. So think about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Any other speakers? 2 for or against? Any on Zoom? Seeing none, closing the public hearing. Any council questions? I had a few just points just to remind us, and I'll get to that. So this is the capital improvement plan that we have adopted. Now we are adopting the resolutions for that. It's worth reminding that we've had this discussion before when we approved the budget. Now it is putting forth the spending to go along with the capital improvement side of that. There's a question on why are some, and they are highlighted in the packet, if they're changed from the capital improvement plan. Part of that is to account for grant opportunities that we could get. We can't get a grant unless we actually change the amount and put it in the budget. A good example of a grant we've applied for, haven't received yet, would be the Mechanic Street pump station. So we still have to have it in there regardless of whether or not we get it or not. And on the for the questions around the Pierce Island waste treatment facility, we can have Eric Fiedler come up and speak to that and Pease, and why a design for a sewage treatment plant that we all know at Pease that we are going to need upgrades to is a lot different than say a police station, which we are still working through the concepts of the design and trying to figure out all of that. But I do want to go again on the record and point out that the Pierce Island, there was a championship state football trophy for the Pierce Island wastewater treatment facility, and if that wasn't enough, there was also $30 million that we got back from the state revolving loan fund. So the press we've talked about, the third press, and I believe one of them, this is for redundancy because one of them did go offline, if I remember correctly, last year, which caused more of a smell, which emanated out in more places. So this is for a redundancy standpoint. But Eric, would you mind coming and answering, or just speaking to, I guess, Pease a little bit, the Pierce Island, and let's see if there's any updates you want to throw in on the water main project while we have you up there, or maybe we can get that too. Just that's not on the funding that we're talking about tonight, but we'll just have, it will be wastewater, water week here at the council, and we'll talk about all of them. Would you please just, Eric, speak a little bit on the Pease and Pierce Island projects?
All right. I'll start on the, thank you, Eric Fiedler, Eric Fiedler, city engineer. I'll start on the Pease project. So that one is progressing towards 60%. We got through a successful value engineering exercise. Basically, in that facility it's a lot of money, but it's less than half of what was originally planned for the facility. It was going to originally be a capacity expansion. Now it's more of a reliability and kind of infrastructure backbone rehabilitation. The reality at the site is the electrical service is limiting what we have to provide for additional aeration at the site. So unfortunately, a lot of this is to increase our aeration capacity and treatment capacity at the site, but in order to do that, we have to bring in a new electrical service and rebuild kind of like the bones of the site. So at this point, our engineer's estimate is approximately $20 to $25 million. We value engineered out a couple $1 million of that, and we're getting close to the 60%. But in terms of concepts, we're not in the concept phase. We're physically sizing buildings, replacing equipment. So in terms of things that are going to change, they're pretty well fleshed out. The 60 to 100% is more specific, laying pipes out and electrical service stuff and the little details. So I think at that point we're anticipating advertising in early next year for more of a summer to later summer start of construction type thing. Sorry, was there anything else at Pease that you wanted me to
No,
mention?
that was helpful. We're just trying to get an understanding. So maintenance and improvements of existing facilities.
Yeah, and it's basically rehabilitation, no additional capacity, but this is an old facility. It was originally constructed in the late 1950s, and kind of similar to all of our other facilities, you kind of bolt on the next piece and the next piece. So the new project is really not new. You're just adding a new piece to it or refreshing something that's old. So it's old concrete. You have old other infrastructure. So it was a lot of restoring old stuff that's been there since the 1950s. So it's a challenge, and that's one of those things you start picking away at one thing and it expands to be more.
It's like anybody
Yeah.
doing a home project. Okay, anything on Pierce Island through the discussion and
All right,
questions?
Pierce Island, so we were talking about presses. So the third press was originally value engineered out of the project. That was there's space for it, it's already pre-plumbed. The pipes go in all the same locations. There's basically a hole for the next one to go in there. It was part of that value engineering study. I guess really the issue is that we're running the current presses a lot harder than they were intended to. They're running almost, while they're online, while the staff is there, they're running essentially the full 8-hour shifts. We're emphasizing some maintenance activities, so some components of them are getting re-welded off-site. We have some temporary equipment out there, but we have been trucking sludge over to Pease for processing, and that's one of the benefits of having two facilities and having facilities with redundancy. So that's where we're at. But the additional press will help us with reliability and and not having to run the equipment as many hours. So I think Director of Water Resources, Brian, likes to say that once you turn on facility, it doesn't really stop. So these presses have a lot of hours on them, and having additional redundancy baked into it would be very helpful for the facility.
Okay, so putting in back what was value engineered out will provide for less intensive uses of the existing two pumps.
And higher redundancy, so we can take a train offline while we're doing rehab on it. So it's good to have that extra one. And it was a decision made just to manage costs, during the initial construction. So.
Okay, and that's still $4.9 million spread out over 3 years with the initial
No,
ask.
the presses themselves, it should be less than 1.9 actually. So we're bonding
Okay.
for it. So the presses themselves, we're actually looking at presses for Pease as well, because we have a 35-year-old filter press. So we're actually looking at different technologies. So the presses that we currently have at the island, we're looking at that concept, but we're also looking at another product with a kind of more redundancy baked into it. So we're still, that's one of the where we're at right now at Pease, and it kind of has a corollary to the island where we're kind of looking at which is a little bit easier to maintain, has a little bit more redundancy baked into it. So there was also mention on odors. So we have an odor control system at the site. So basically it sucks the odorous air out of the headwork structure, primary clarifiers, the gravity thickeners, the press building and others. Those are big carbon vessels with some permanganate in them. That is been consumed at this point. So right now I think legal is looking at the terms and conditions. We're trying to get a PO in place to replace the carbon as soon as possible. So that's kind of in the hopper, and it's something that we're trying to take care of this summer as soon as possible. So
Okay.
because we know it's been when you do this design for carbon, odor control, a lot of the vendors like to say, this is a 5 year, 7 years that you'll get out of it, but it's been consumed earlier than anticipated. So I think so basically we have a lot of instruments on there to see like what's the absorption capacity, and it's no longer there. So we'll get new carbon, we'll get that removed by a vendor, and we'll get new carbon placed in there.
Okay, so it does stink a little bit more. There's a plan to change that in the near future.
Right.
Working with legal to do so.
Right, and also one of the clarifiers were, because I would like to say like those clarifiers have been there for a long time. We also have a rebuild on some of the clarifier mechanism and some of the scrapers too, because those scrapers, as they go around, they wear down. So that's another thing we'll be doing this summer, and that'll help with the skimming, and it'll keep any floatables from accumulating in the clarifier. So again, it's routine maintenance. We're constantly, every system keeps on running 24/7. So it's one of these things you just keep on going through and put them on preventative maintenance and repairing when and replacing as we needed. So,
Well, Eric, thank you for all the hard work. There might be some other questions on this.
Fleet Street outfall. Okay, sorry. Do you want me to do, or do you want me to wait?
We'll get it through, and maybe I'll answer a question that you might have. The Fleet Street outfall.
Yeah, so Fleet Street outfall, that's a stormwater outfall. So it's a large diameter stormwater outfall. So there's no sewage going down that. So we're not doing another CSO at all.
Okay. Any questions for Eric while we got him? Counselor Denton, and then Counselor.
Two
David.
comments, then a question. First, thank you for the recent redesign of just the permeable parking space out there. I'm out there a lot with the dogs. People seem to appreciate it. Second, and I sound like a broken record here, I think it was 2017 or 18 in the CIP, I put a anaerobic digester in the CIP to actually digest the sludge and turn it into electricity, and that's something which the council recently started discussing again. But my question actually has to do with a comment that was brought up regarding the consent decree and the sewage off of Sagamore. I didn't say that correctly, but I think you know what I'm talking about. Are we still in line with the consent decree on what needs to be spent?
Yeah, that's a little bit.
Acting City Manager, Mark.
So the Sagamore consent decree was completed, and the monies that were appropriated back when a while ago have been expended. These monies are for the private sewer hookups. Former city council, 2 councils ago, voted to extend the private hookups to treat them just like they would have been if they were tying into a gravity system. So these monies are going to assist property owners for pumping systems to get into the low pressure system. So
thank you.
Yep.
Counselor Tabor.
Thanks, Your Honor. In the Housing Committee, of course, we're looking at ways that we can expand housing, and I get questions from a lot of people about our capacity on, as the city grows in the number of units, is there any issue of capacity? As I remember when the Pierce Island plant went online, it was only at 60% of its capacity.
I'll step up on that one. Brian Gatz, Director of Water. This applies both to the water and wastewater side, so yes, we get a lot of questions on that. And the Pierce Island facility was built with expanded capacity built in, so that already is there. And you know, what we're talking about with the presses and all that is not to expand the capacity. It's strictly an operational thing.
So there's plenty of headroom.
At the moment, correct.
And at Pease, is it, are we at capacity there?
The Pease system, I think that's Eric.
So we're not at capacity. There's basically when we work with PDA, we have allocations for the industrial users as well as the non-constrained users. That would be light commercial, and there's not really much residential there. And then we have additional capacity baked into the planning document, and that's part of the project that we're doing at Pease is to increase aeration so that we can have additional allocation, and then we have enough capacity for the proposed future growth over at PDA. That would be the full build out on there. So we work with PDA, and they have some projections on what their anticipated growth is, but they're pretty boxed in because of wetlands and some of the features of their property.
That's very helpful, thanks.
Any other questions? Oh, Councilor Bagley.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Most of my questions were answered, but I think it's worth highlighting a lot of what we do with water and sewage is driven by federal and state regulations. The sewage that we put into the water, or the treated effluent that we put into the river today is orders of magnitude cleaner than it used to be 10 years ago, but certainly 50 years ago when you can open the windows at the middle school. The water that we drink is much cleaner than it used to be. I mean, we didn't even control for PFAS. We control for that now. We'll control for that at a higher level. All of these things are expensive and cost money, and that's what we're paying for tonight and have been paying for. And the other thing I think it's important, if you build a $100 million sewer plant, it's like buying a car or any other device that's mechanical and runs, except this one you would be driving 24/7. If you need to change the oil or the tires, you don't throw it out and build a whole new or buy a new car. Just like with a sewer treatment plant, when something wears out or breaks, you don't throw away the sewer treatment plant and build a new one. So when people say it's going to last 50 years or 100 years, that doesn't mean it's maintenance free. It means the vast majority of it's going to last, but the wear components, the scrapers, the things that are moving, they'll have to be upgraded and replaced as time goes on. And I think a lot of times when people see us spending this amount of money, they think it's really capacity driven, when in large part it's driven by the increased regulations to make sure that our rivers and waterways are cleaner and that the water that we drink is cleaner and safer. And I just think we can't highlight that often enough.
Hey, Councilor Bagley. Brian.
Thank you, Mayor. If I may, yes, and every year the pipes that are in the ground are a year older than they were a year before. Regarding the Little Bay water line that came up, we recently gave an update during the Safe Water Advisory Group, so Councilor Blaylock and Lombardi were both there. So we gave an update there, and then also last week we issued our water supply update, so page 15. If anyone wants to read, provides an update on that Little Bay water line work, and we've learned a lot. This has been an iterative process, year 9 of this project, and the valves that are installed on the existing water mains provide us opportunity now that if we were to get a leak on either of the 2 mains going under the bay, we could shut them off. This wasn't the ability. We had old valves that were inoperable. So we have new ones in there. What we also learned, which is in that update, the existing pipes are in better shape than we thought, so that we actually had to tap them, and when you tap the pipe, you get to see the inside. So that was a bit of a relief to us. And then we operated them, so we actually shut one of them off and ran water through just one, and the flow was almost negligible difference. So the good thing about that is if we get a leak in one of those lines, we can shut it down, we can get out there and fix it. The third water line, we are still working through a permitting process to try to do a revised construction of the third line, and it's very complex with the shoreline protection and all the fisheries timing and that. So we're working with DS and the Army Corps of Engineers and various others to hopefully revise that. But in the meantime, we're feeling a bit more comfortable with those 2 lines under the bay. And we will continue to update council on that. And regarding the monies, we do have some bonded monies that have been put towards the water valves, and we believe money well spent. And should we need to move forward or need additional monies for the third line, should we get good pricing and the permit, we will come back and update the council on that.
Excellent news. Thank you, Brian. Any other questions of the council? I will wait a motion.
I will make a motion to move to adopt the resolution as presented.
Second.
Any questions? Kelly, will you please take the roll?
Assistant Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Tabor?
Yes.
Counselor Cook?
Yes.
Counselor Denton?
Yes.
Counselor Blaylock?
Yes.
Counselor Bagley?
Yes.
Counselor Moreau?
Yes.
Counselor Lombardi?
Yes.
Mayor McEachran?
Yes.
Unanimous.
We're now on to the public hearing, second reading of ordinances. Public hearing, second reading of proposed ordinance amending Chapter 10, zoning ordinance, solar energy panels, Article 6, overlay districts, Section 10.633.20, exemptions from certificate of approval, Section 10.633.30, administrative approval, Section 10.634.20, application contents adding Section 10.634.24, Section 10.636.32, parentheses 1, public hearings, Section 10.636.12, notice of disapproval, and Article 15, definitions, Section 10.1530, general terms of applicability. We have a presentation.
Your Honor?
and Peter Stith.
Oh, if I'm going to make an amendment, do you prefer I make it before the presentation or after?
We will have to have it, I believe, after the presentation. And is this an amendment that was, would this amendment require us to have a second or repost second reading?
I believe so. Yeah.
Oh,
It would.
Yeah.
So, let's see. Well, we have to have, I guess, legal inquiry, do we have to have the public hearing before we have the amendment?
I would think so.
Okay, yeah, because there's nobody can, so we'll have to have another public hearing. And nobody would know what the, because we didn't advance notice anything besides this, so we have to have a public hearing.
Okay, so amendments can't be made at second reading?
They can be made
the end of the-
at second reading, but they have to go through.
Yeah, that was the only question.
Okay, all right, Peter.
All right, good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. Peter Stith, Planning Manager. And we are at the second reading of the amendments for solar panels. If you'll advance to the next slide.
Oh, that didn't work. Hang on. It's not going. Right.
He's coming.
Hope is on its way. Yeah. I thought it would go with the arrows. No, it's not. There you go. Okay. Works now.
Let's just make sure that,
Yeah.
can we go to the back and forth? Okay.
There it
Thanks.
goes.
All right,
All right.
perfect.
All right. The first couple slides are showing the timeline for these amendments. I think it's important to have this in here because of the work that not only the City Council did, but the Planning Board and the HDC. The first, in January of 2024, the amendments were proposed to add 2 paragraphs to the exemption section that would allow solar energy panels that were flush mounted to rooftops of existing structures and which do not require other alterations to existing structures. That was one of the paragraphs added, and the second was for accessory elements to solar energy panels which do not require other alterations to existing structures. So those were the original amendments in January, and after discussion amongst the council, they referred it to the Planning Board and HDC to have a work session with a report back. So they did have that meeting February 21st, 2024, and then at the March 4th City Council meeting, both chairs from the Planning Board and HDC reported back to Council. At that meeting, the Council voted to hold the first reading at the May 6, 2024 Council meeting in order to give the HDC and Planning Board 2 more months to work on the amendments. The HDC held 3 work sessions from in March and 2 in April. And then if you go to the next slide, they supplied the Planning Board with their amendments at the April 25th Planning Board meeting. And at that meeting, the Planning Board scheduled a public hearing for May 16th. And then the May 6th Council meeting, both chairs again reported back. And at that meeting, the Council voted to then postpone first reading to June 3rd so that the Planning Board could have their public hearing. At their public hearing, the Planning Board voted to recommend approval of the HDC amendments. And June 3rd Council meeting, they had first reading, and then now we're here at the second reading and public hearing. If you go to the next slide. So the amendments include changing section 10.633.20, which is the section that references the exemptions for certificate of approval, just adding that as a staff level exemptions, and adding paragraph 28, and then incorporate the Planning Board's amendments into that section. So that's the bulk of the amendments, which spell out what, if you meet this criteria, that you can then receive an exemption and would not have to go to the HDC for a certificate of approval. Next slide. The amendments also clarify the administrative approval process and add a section to require a letter of certification by an engineer or architect to certify that the existing roof could support the load of the additional panels without requiring extensive modifications. And the next slide, several definitions were added to support the paragraph 28 and the criteria in that section. And not to be overlooked, there are also some edits to change the word chairman to chair. And I think Chair Rudig would appreciate that amendment. So that's the bulk of the amendments, which you've seen for several months now. If you have any questions, we can go through any specific section.
Are there council questions for Peter? Great presentation
All right,
when there's
thank you.
no questions on it. Peter?
I'll
All right.
stand by.
All right. Are there questions of the city council before we get to the public hearing and speakers?
I'll just speak. I don't know if anyone had watched the HTC meeting on June 5th, but this was a big hour debate over the topic of minimally visible, just to give everyone a kind of a, just my experience, with these applications. I didn't know if anyone else had watched them or not.
Did get to see that. Are there any other questions before we open to the public hearing?
Your Honor. I'd be interested in a point of view of legal. If we have an applicant turned down at the staff level versus if the applicant goes through a full hearing and the HDC as a land use board deliberates and makes a decision. Is it easier to defend a decision from the whole board, the whole commission, as opposed to a staff decision?
And it just to clarify, when you say turn down, you mean not administratively approved, or not staff approved, so it would then go to it would go for an administrative approval or a application itself. Is that at least my understanding of how the ordinance would work? But Peter, maybe
Right.
that's a question we should
If
ask.
staff determined that it didn't meet the criteria, then it would just go to the HTC for a certificate of approval. So that would be the
first appeal. Yeah.
I'm not sure if that answers your question,
That does. No,
Counselor.
it's obvious, and I should have thought of that before.
Okay.
Councilor Bagley?
Thank you. Just looking at this again, one of the things it says is character defining architectural features, tangible aspects of a building and its setting, including the overall shape of the building, its materials, its craftsmanship, decorative details, the character of its site, its history, related aspects of the site and the environment. Its materials, as it's written, it sounds like it encompasses everything. Would that include asphalt shingles we're now calling that a character defining architectural feature? Because it sounds like there's no exclusion of any of the materials.
I don't claim to be an expert in HTC, but I think that HTC has a more subjective interpretation of things, and I would say it could, but
So as this is written, basically anything the building is made out of would be...
Could be.
Okay.
Any other questions before we open to the public hearing? Oh, Reagan, or
Chair
Rudy.
Hi there. I'm sorry I couldn't be there tonight. I'm recovering from a terrible virus that I would swear was COVID, but the test told me no. I just wanted to answer the question about character defining features, which are the tangible pieces of a building that make it what it is. So it's not clearly defined as every single material on the building as it stands now, but those which contribute to the special character of the building. So it's not just that, so asphalt shingles wouldn't necessarily be a character defining feature unless they're a particular type or early style of asphalt shingle that really is particular to the building. usually it's like slate shingles or slate tiles or wood shingles on a particular, on a decorative piece of the building or something like that.
Thank you, Chair.
I don't know if that helps.
Any other questions before the public hearing, noting that we will have additional council questions, deliberations, and possible amendments after the public hearing? Okay, opening the public hearing. Please speak to, for, or against. No, okay, no one on, okay, we have Sue?
Sue Polidora, Middle Street, and I think I've been pretty clear on what my opinion is regarding taking away authority and making it into an administrative approval process. It will leave the HDC completely out of many decisions that they should be involved in. And that is also included in the RSA description that I read earlier. The RSAs are above our ordinances. So we got to be careful that what we do doesn't contradict what the RSA calls for in giving or taking away the authority from the HDC. Right now, there are many locations within the historic district that already have panels. I'm not opposed to that. There are many, if you go and drive around, you will see them. They are located in a particular area. They're not visible. So there are certain guidelines that are being followed. By doing an administrative process like they're bypassing the HDC altogether, is leaving them out of the process, something that is clearly defined in our ordinances and also RSAs. So I'm asking that either the necessary amendments be offered tonight or that this would be put on some sort of hold until more information is acquired. 2%, and I'm going to keep repeating this until it clicks, 2% of the total area of Portsmouth is in the historic district, or the historic district is only 2% of the entire area. Many of that 2%, only 5 or 6 different properties within that are historic, national historic monuments. Okay? Portsmouth was always known for its history before anything else. Long before the restaurants come and go, Portsmouth is going to have a history that we can boast about throughout the whole state. No place else. We used to be the capital of the state of New Hampshire. There's a lot of history here. Needs to be protected. Only 2%. Please keep this in mind. You are the caretakers of this legacy right now, and it got to be preserved. It's got to be protected. 2%. 5 or 6 national monuments within that 2%. So please think about how this is going to be handled. I think that the HDC needs to be involved rather than delegating this to someone and the planning board or the planning department to approve. You're creating a lot more steps that a lot more headaches than it needs to be. It's always been through the HDC. That's what is mandated, and that's what I'm asking you to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Peter Huda. The only thing I would ask, I could not see the latest version of what you were putting up of section 10.63331, and I would ask if you could put that up again, clarify a point. The only other thing I'd like to impress upon you is you're putting a lot of pressure, I guess I would say, on one person of staff to approve something like this, where it could be spread, the responsibility could be spread upon the HDC committee when looking at something like this for an administrative approval. So I would ask you to think about that. And the only other thing would be, please keep in mind what we're giving up here. Yes, it's only a solar panel that you're looking at, but it is 2.2% of our precious historic district. And just like Sue said, I am not against solar panels. The rest of them have been approved. All other cities approved them, but they're not visible. What was just approved on St. John's Church is going to be visible from everywhere downtown, whether you like it or not. You can tell yourself it's not, but it is, and people will notice. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Page Trace, 27 Hancock Street. I'm going to drive home the 2.2% a little bit further. I'm going to say it's only 2.2% of this city. But within that 2.2%, we have 7 national historic landmark properties. We're a special town. We have a special historic character. People come from all over to see that character and to see St. John's Church that's now going to have lots of pretty solar panels on it. I too have no problem with solar panels. I would advocate them for everywhere else in this city. But a 21st century solar panel that's visible to the tourist that comes specifically, it would be like asking Colonial Williamsburg if they'd like to have solar panels. I know the answer to that. No. With all due respect, people come to visit us. They spend their hard-earned dollars. They spend a lot of their dollars at Prescott Park and everywhere else in this town. And they do it as an adjunct of coming to see an historic downtown Portsmouth, a National Historic District. How will our solar panels affect that National Historic District? Has anybody checked in on that? Maybe you should. You know, beware of the consequences. I'm sure you're all just going to rubber stamp it tonight, but you have an historic district commission. And regardless, with all due respect of what your council representative believes is his charge, any of the rest of us who have read the regulations know what our historic district is charged with our commission. So you're going to willy-nilly override that and not let them take charge of it. I can think of no one else that I would rather have make a decision on something than Chair Rudig or Mr. Adams or anyone else on the commission, but let them do it as a commission. Let them decide about everyone and solar panels, because the fact of the matter is architectural asphalt shingles exist on my house, and my house is the Joshua Wentworth house. They exist because cedar wasn't available when we did the restoration. So we have architectural asphalt shingles. Would you like me to put solar panels on my house by right because I could? I probably wouldn't, but that's my personal preference. But I'm just saying, let it be even and fair and square with everyone. With all due respect, think about it before you act, because you will kill the goose that laid the golden egg. Thank you.
Thank you, Paige.
Esther Kennedy, 41 Pickering Ave. I guess I'm perplexed here. I'm trying to figure out why a couple people on this council want to destroy the HDC. As someone who is personally involved in solar farms, and knows a lot about solar farms, when I was sitting on the council in 2014, I and Councilor then Zelita Morgan put forward to ask the council to look at putting up solar farms in our community. And in open lands, we also asked at the time to have the city management look at what would be on top of roofs that can't be seen. And unfortunately, there was not much feedback on that, and I was not on council after that point. I guess, we hear in California that there's so much solar energy put forward now that they can't utilize it. They don't have any place to store it. 2.2%, folks. 2.2% of what people come to see. Because right now, there's no reason to leave Boston because you have the waterfront, except for our historical neighborhoods that people like to walk around. And I see these people. They stop into our little shop. They talk to us about the historical neighborhoods, and we talk about the railways that you can see during low tide and all those kinds of things. And people are intrigued, and they come here for that and the arts. So I ask you, I pointed out to you when this all started, there are already historical panels in my neighborhood. They're on buildings there, and I've invited you to come down and take a look at them. Again, I will take you another boat ride, so you can smell the sewage treatment plant and you can see the solar panels out on Round Island. I would love to do that to anyone that would like to come down. So they are here. Our historical district has done a beautiful job with solar panels. Why are we jeopardizing that? Why are you changing that? Is it because you don't want historical Portsmouth? Because if you vote for this, hey, I'll put them on my house. I'll put them right on front. We'll cover the house. That's not right. Because my house is in every picture. U.S. Army, picture. U.S. Navy, picture. I have them from all over the world. People send me of my house and of our historical waterfront. You go to the Manchester Airport, luggage claim, picture. People want to enjoy the historical nature of our city. I don't understand how you folks have decided upon taking upon yourselves to change that. If there were no solar panels in the HDC, then I could see it a little bit more, but there are. And the HDC did a beautiful job putting them in. So why are you changing the rules now? And again, please look at the RSAs. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Any other speakers, 2 for or against? Checking in on Zoom. Any speakers, 2 for or against? Bill, Mr. Downey, would you like to speak? I saw the hand for a second. Don't know if that was just Fortin with it. All right. Going once. Going twice. Closing the public hearing.
Your Honor, I motion that we move to pass second reading of the proposed zoning amendments regarding solar energy panels and schedule a third and final reading at the August 5th, 2024 City Council meeting.
It's funny, I was supposed to do that.
Is there a second?
Second.
And I'll speak to that real briefly. The historic district may be only 2% of our total area, but it's actually 2% that may be the most vulnerable to climate change. And as I've held since the beginning, property owners should be allowed to do what they can with their own property to mitigate against climate change. And what's currently in front of us here is taking the Historic District Commission's and the Planning Board's recommendations and turning them into an ordinance. Thank you.
Councilor Denton? Councilor Moreau?
I'd like to make a legal inquiry as to whether or not this ordinance, as it's written, is actually in compliance with our RSAs.
Well, I'd have to say I've not personally gone through all the IRSAs for this, but I know it's been reviewed in the legal department. And it would be in compliance with the RSAs based upon that review. Yeah.
Okay.
Councilor Lombardi?
Thank you, Mayor. I was asked actually to make that motion. Councilor Denton took it. There's a couple things about this that I have a problem with. One is the process of a administrative approval. I have great respect for Peter Stith. I think that he's a good man, does good work. By his own admission, he knows little about historic buildings and structures. In fact, there's actually no one in the planning department that has a background in historic structures. And so to assign a task that concerns historic structures and its integrity to someone who has no background in that is very disturbing to me when you have an HDC who has, which has a lot of experience, knowledge, training in historic structures. It seems wrong to me. And as many people have said, the Historic District Commission has made very good decisions about solar panels in the ones that they have approved during the past years. So I will vote against this motion because of that. And thank you very much.
Councilor Lombardi? Councilor Moreau? You guys, we're flirting with the hands here. Hands up, hands down. Okay, so and Councilor Blaylock and then Councilor Bagley.
I have concerns regarding the amount of pressure that we put on staff to make administrative approvals when a lot of the way this is written is very subjective. And I think that might cause a lot of issues and a lot of pushback. So I guess I have concerns about how much pressure we put on our staff. We had a lot of discussions about administrative approvals during land use regarding ADUs. And I guess I am sensitive to how much we put pressure on one person to make those decisions. So I'll vote against it.
Clarifying question, though. We have administrative approvals currently that are made by staff that go on the administrative approval. The motion that was proposed by Councilor Denton was to take those recommendations that we're going to go for administrative approval and make them staff recommendations and not go to administrative approval. And so the same person is making both of those, and either one, just saying if it meets the criteria, doesn't have to go to a meeting. I just want to make sure that we're not asking for something that wasn't requested by the HDC and Planning Board. We're just asking that if it meets those requirements, it doesn't have to go on to a meeting.
Right, but it's still very subjective, and they're the only eyes that are on it. So that's my concern.
Okay. But I guess Councilor Bagley.
Thank you, Your Honor. Two comments. One, I guess a request to the rest of this council. Our job up here is to set policy, and the only employee that we're in charge of is the city manager. And I think it's not becoming of us to question the credentials or the qualifications of other staff members and to say that they do or don't have those qualifications. There's over 800 employees in the city. I think it's not appropriate from us on this dais to say whether or not someone does or does not have a qualification in any area. I think we should defer to the city manager's judgment on that, and if we don't think she has a qualification, that's something that we can take up, but it's not appropriate for us to take up the qualifications of individual employees. And that's happened again and again in this discussion, and I'm very disappointed with that. I also won't be supporting this. There's a number of things in here, such as having a certification from an architect about load bearing. That didn't exist before. We're adding hurdles to solar panels here. So I'm going to make a motion that would require a second reading. But I have a motion that we eliminate this proposal and we go back to the very simple, non-bureaucratic proposal of solar panels will be allowed in the HTC on the roof if they are in parallel with the roof and the roof is not made out of wood shingles or slate material.
I'll second that amendment.
So what is,
The original, or I have the original language in front of me. It was solar energy panels flush mounted to rooftops made of materials other than slate or wood of the existing structures, which do not require other alterations to existing structures.
I accept that friendly amendment.
all right.
Was that the ordinance that was reviewed on May 16th? Or
Yeah,
was that in January?
I believe we started with exempting from all roofs on May 6th, and then we made a consolation to add the term rooftops made of material other than slate or wood as a consolation.
I just think it takes away.
No, that's removing, or that's
How much
removing from the HGC's purview solar energy panels flush mounted to rooftops made of materials other than slate or wood.
A legal, yeah, so I guess a legal inquiry on this, just from a standpoint, obviously it would require another public hearing, but I guess like the natural course of business is that council moves forward. This would reverse the previous amendment that was previously made, and so I'm curious of whether or not we can actually do that under, like,
I think we need a majority or a supermajority vote.
so like in terms of like, we've already made an amendment. We've made an amendment of that, and now this is a request to go back, backsies on that previous, and go back to the pre-existing. So we had a motion, we made an amendment to that motion through Councilor Denton, and now we're asking to remove that, that amended, or amendment that previously amended it at the first reading 2 weeks ago. And my question is, does that follow Robert's Rules of Order of saying that a legal or a meeting has to continue to kind of march forward? Can we, I guess, amend and unamend things as we go along?
So currently you have a motion to pass what's in front of you for
Correct.
second reading.
Yeah, and there's a proposed
So
amendment.
there's a proposed amendment to this, which I believe is the proper procedural motion to amend what you have in front of you. It will require,
I know, but my question is, this was business that was already brought forth and already discussed, and we had a motion that amended the previous motion. Now we're being asked to consider whether or not we reverse that motion that we had
And
at a
go
previous,
back to
and
the
go back to
prior
the previous motion.
Is it a motion to reconsider of the previous vote to move this forward?
Right, so it would require 6 votes, not 5.
Does that, I guess, like, I'm just,
Right, is it effectively a motion for reconsideration of the vote, or is it simply an amendment to an ordinance which you can make at first or second reading?
Right,
It's
but
a
it's-
question of where that falls.
but it's certainly a reconsideration of the previous amendment, because we're making the previous amendment. Is that?
so someone who voted in the minority would have to, or majority rather, would have to vote to reconsider.
Which they
And you
did.
need 2/3
And it has
to
to be,
accomplish that.
and there's a time limit on that.
Yeah, what was the time limit on, I thought it
It's
had
at
to be
the
made
same
at the same meeting.
It does.
Yeah, so
Yes.
it's not a, it's not a, it's not a, it's not a, it's not a legitimate amendment that's been made. We would had to have made that at the previous meeting to have that last at this meeting. You
Your Honor,
can't-
I'm really disappointed.
If it is essentially a motion to reconsider, which I think we've assessed it that it is, then you're correct. It's not timely
Okay.
and out of order.
I'll rescind, or I guess I don't even need to, but.
Okay.
I will speak after.
I would simply say, if it was a motion to suspend the rules, and if that passed by, I think, a two-thirds majority, then they can make that amendment, because it'd be suspending the rules we just said this would be in violation of.
Of the,
Motion to reconsider.
The rules around reconsider.
okay.
Motion to suspend those.
All right, is there a motion to reconsider?
Or motion to suspend the rules.
Or a motion to suspend the rules to reconsider?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we'll have a roll call vote on the motion to reconsider,
Or suspend the
or suspend the rules to reconsider.
Who seconded?
I did. Councilor Bagley.
Thank you. Okay, so we need 6 votes. Assistant Mayor Kelly?
No.
Counselor Tabor?
No.
Counselor Cook? No. Counselor Denton?
Yes.
Counselor Blaylock?
Yes.
Counselor Bagley?
Yes.
Counselor Moreau?
No.
Counselor Lombardi?
No.
Mayor McEachran?
No.
Does it pass?
Okay.
Can I speak now? Thank you. So I was under the impression we could amend things at second reading, so I was a little disappointed that I was misinformed. However, I'm going to share my experience. So there was a application for solar on June 5th on the HGC from St. John's Church. They were looking to apply 102 panels to the parish house, not the main church. Their parish house, Thaxter Hall, which was built in 1953. Yeah, so it is a historic building when you compare it to the church, not so much. So we had a lot of debate over the minimally visible, and character defining features, I could argue, could also be very subjective. But the minimally visible, I'll just quote some of the things that were said. One commissioner said, this is minimally visible. One said, this is maximally visible. One said, they would be all for it if it was actually going to affect climate change. They said in some ways it's minimally visible, in some ways it's not. So how am I supposed to make a decision? Someone else said, it doesn't protect the historic view. It's only a view from a parking lot. So just give you kind of an idea of the different opinions of one view. So it just remains so subjective that whoever's looking at it is going to interpret it different ways. I don't think that's setting good policy. So we did approve the 54 panels on the Chapel Street side, which you can barely see. The 48 panels on the Bow Street side were denied, which you can also barely see. They're only visible from the church's parking lot. The view is blocked by a white house, several trees, and then the cemetery wall. They're black panels going on a dark roof with non-glare finish. It's not on the main structure. Members of the church were here, the parishioners here. The church's goal was to save some money. They're a nonprofit organization, and they're trying to help fight climate change. But what the instructions the HGC has been given, or if we pass this and give it to staff, it still remains too subjective. It needs to be as objective as possible. The solar panels, if we're worried about the shingles and protecting them, the solar panels will actually protect the asphalt shingles. They'll extend the life of the shingles, and there'll be less asphalt shingles in the dump. We had a few speakers besides members from the church. One was Peter Rice, who used to serve on the HGC under Eileen Foley. Peter, who lives in Newcastle now, not our Peter Rice. But he actually serves on the Newcastle HGC currently. And to quote him, he said, you guys have to see the big picture on this. So just to conclude, to have a policy that prevents members of our community from saving money and being environmentally responsible, I believe is wrong.
Councilor Blaylock, any other comments? Councilor Tabor.
Your Honor, yes, I also attended that meeting. I was here for another meeting in City Hall and went over and watched it. And by the way, I haven't been on the governing board, which is called the Vestry, since 2020, and I just go to sit in the pews. But the guidelines, which, let's remember, we asked the HDC to develop these guidelines, and in conjunction with the planning department, and through many meetings, they developed them, I felt were implemented in just the right way with St. John's. I know the church was disappointed not to get their full solar array, but the HDC deliberated, and they had to decide, is Chapel Street minimally visible or not? And they decided, as Councilor Blaylock says, it's minimally visible. On the other side of Thaxter Hall, overlooking the parking lot, they decided it is visible from Bow Street. So the simple guideline of, is it minimally visible from the street, and the street is defined in this language, seemed to me to have worked. Part of the array was granted, part of it was rejected. And to me, it was a test case. And the HDC, it was not a unanimous vote, it was a split vote. And it seemed to have worked in the way that they, as a body, had intended.
Councilor Cook. Thank you, Councilor Tabor.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a bit of a lengthy statement. We've been operating under a false dichotomy that solar panels and historic preservation are two opposite sides of a debate when they actually are not. In fact, the National Park Service guidelines for historic preservation have a whole section on placing solar panels in historic districts. Despite the portrayal of our Historic District Commission as opposing solar, they regularly approve solar panel projects in the Historic District. In fact, the Historic District Commission rarely rejects applications for solar panels, instead opting to get to yes through adjustments in proposals to help owners better preserve their historic structure while gaining the benefits of solar energy. If as a community we choose to continue on a path of arguing this issue like it is an either-or proposal, we're missing the vital nuance that makes good public policy making, and we're ignoring the real issue at hand. This debate is not about preventing climate change or reducing the use of energy from the power grid. The historic district is such a small portion of our community that adding panels to the entire district would have a minimal impact on overall energy usage within Portsmouth. And again, the HDC is already approving projects within the historic district. The real issue is the opinion that the Historic District Commission process and the commissioners themselves have gotten too difficult for homeowners and businesses to navigate, and that they are making decisions that go against the interests of our community. I do not share this view. However, I am sympathetic to neighbors and businesses that feel that the Historic District guidelines are difficult to follow or confusing. In one of my first meetings with the city manager after being elected to office, I asked when the HDC would be reviewing and clarifying its guidelines. As a resident of the Historic District, I've heard all the stories from my neighbors about challenges with getting approvals. Does the HDC always get it right? Well, no. Do they try to make reasoned decisions based upon their guidelines? Yes. More importantly, these are all volunteers for the city of Portsmouth. They serve long hours without pay, and they do that because they care deeply about our community. Many of the members have unique expertise in historic preservation, and they serve as a resource for our city staff and the wider community. We could never duplicate their experience level through staffing, and we wouldn't want to. That would lead to an overly large city government for a community our size. Like many volunteers with unique experience in their fields, like those who serve on the Public Art Review Committee, the Economic Development Commission, the trustees of trust funds, and the Conservation Commission, we're better off as a city by heeding their expert advice. Do we need some reform? Yes. The Historic District Commission has offered an alternative to the current process that moves solar panel review outside their regular public hearing process to an administrative approval at the top of their meetings. They have also created clear guidelines for that process. We should value the work that they have done over the last few months to create a more streamlined process for property owners. In addition, we should lean into the efforts for the HDC to review and update their guidelines with a consultant, especially around energy efficiency options, and that is already funded in the capital improvement plan. We have a process in place to improve our guidelines, and we should use it. Whenever we go off script and try to change ordinances without a thorough review from all parties and experts, we risk unintended consequences. This is the reason I've been asking so many questions about historic preservation and the unintended consequences if we make changes hastily. I know we have an excellent planning and sustainability department that is well-staffed with environmental planners. We do not, however, have the same level of expertise in historic preservation. We need to ask as many questions as possible and to get the expert advice that we need to make well-informed improvements to the HDC ordinance. If this debate were really about encouraging as many homeowners and businesses as possible to utilize solar panels for energy production, we would be focusing on the vast majority of the city, which is outside the historic district. We allow solar panels throughout Portsmouth, but many businesses and homeowners have not opted to add them to their properties. We should consider incentives for property owners to implement solar power. One possible option is offering a reduction or waiver of permitting fees for solar projects. Another proposal that I support is the establishment of a green buildings trust fund to help property owners without financial means to make green upgrades to their homes, including solar panels. Finally, there are much quicker and efficient ways to improve green energy consumption in Portsmouth. The first of those is to encourage everyone to opt up to 100% green energy through community power. While this option does not generate electricity in Portsmouth, it encourages green energy production in the electric industry. That is a priority because the more green power generation capability developed in the wider marketplace, the more green power is available on a larger scale in all of our region, not just here. And as more green power generation capability is developed, we can drive a green power revolution across all communities, not just our own. And without a demand for green power, that capability will not develop as quickly as we would like. Lastly, let's address the biggest climate change issue impacting our community. It's not whether people in the historic district can generate their own green power on their roofs. The biggest issue is the regular flooding we are starting to experience in low-lying areas across Portsmouth. This impacts residential neighborhoods, city resources, and commercial businesses. Adding solar panels to houses in the South End will not change the flooding trajectory for that neighborhood, Prescott Park, Strawberry Bank, Junkins Avenue, Richards Avenue, and the Sagamore River area. What will help is focusing the limited city staff time we have available to help develop adaptations for homeowners and businesses impacted by flooding, including planning for infrastructure improvements that minimize the impact, like tide-activated floodgates for South Mill Pond or North Mill Pond, sealing off our stormwater system for sea level flooding, stormwater pumping systems to reduce the duration of flooding events. I'm a fierce proponent of climate mitigation and adaptation measures. But I also know that when we create animosity and disdain in our community for values that others hold, like a love of historic preservation and a passion for preserving our history, we create division and risk a backlash against the very efforts we are passionate about implementing. Historic preservation is a major pillar in the recently adopted cultural plan, and it was the most important concern of the respondents in our surveys around the arts and cultural priorities for the city. It is a priority for residents, just as sustainability is also a priority. The green revolution we need is one that is inclusive of all community interests and focuses on those changes that have the most impact while supporting members of our community who need the financial help to make changes that benefit them and serve us all. That's why I'm opposing the changes.
Councilor Denton.
Thank you, Your Honor. On January 6, 2016, I spoke at an HCC meeting pushing for solar array guidelines in the historic commission, in the historic district. 8 years later, some guidelines from the HDC itself are in front of us for a vote. They are not perfect. They are not what Councillor Blaylock, Councillor Bagley, or myself wanted. Likewise, they are not what Councillor Cook's asking for, what Councillor Moreau is asking for, what Councillor Lombardi is asking for. But what they are is a compromise, and they are far better than the status quo. It is progress to allow individual homeowners do what they can to mitigate against climate change on their property. And I want to ask everyone to please support this. Thank you.
Councillor Denton, any other questions or comments? Councillor Bagley.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I guess I just disagree with the assessments of Councillor Cook and Councillor Denton. I think this throws up a lot of new hurdles, creates a lot more bureaucracy, and is going to discourage the adoption of solar panels. There's two things. One, I think it's eminently important that we do things to fight climate change, and here's a tool that we could have that would cost the city $0, unlike tidal gates, which would cost substantially more. However, there's also the ability for people who live in their homes, not tourists, not people that come to visit our city to take a picture, people living in their homes, to make an appreciable improvement to their life, to reduce their electrical bills, to do something good for the environment. I think that's worth something. And I think what the council is saying here today is that that's not worth something. And we value asphalt shingles higher than those things.
Hey, Councillor Bagley. Councillor Blaylock.
Thank you. I'll just say, to sit on the HDC and to prevent a nonprofit from being able to get relief from their electricity bill, they have to fundraise money every year. And they were looking to get 130% electric bill, so they were going to give back. But to be the body that's in front of that, from preventing them from doing that, that is not why I got elected. That's not why I ran. I won't be sleeping well.
Councillor Blaylock. All right, so we're almost ready for a vote. Means I get to say something. So I'll pass the gavel. You're the good assistant mayor. First, I want to thank Councillor Denton at the last meeting. I thought that, there's a lot of opinions that we have, and certainly have a lot of passionate opinions held by a lot of people. I don't think many people look to the city council. I mean, partly to have passionate opinions, but mostly is to move the puck forward a little bit by a little bit. And I thought that the amendment that Councillor Denton made at the last meeting to take all of the recommendations of the planning board and the HDC on face value, that these are good amendments and that they shouldn't have to go before, or these are good guidelines and they shouldn't have to go before the HDC. They're so good that we're just going to shift them to a staff approval. That seemed like a really good compromise because it moved the puck forward. I know that there's some concern about structural, Councillor Bagley mentioned one little point on adding a hurdle, but if you're going to have a company put solar panels on your house, you're going to get them to sign off on the fact that it is not going to break your roof. So I thought that was a pretty easy bar to jump over. And to say that that is adding more hoops, when in fact it's saying, hey, there's a lot of steps that we can take to remove hoops, I think that's a little disingenuous to come out against that. Secondly, the great former Councillor Kennedy said that she was going to throw panels all over her roof. Well, if they're minimally visible and it's staff approved, have at it. If it's not, you're going to have to come before the HDC still and get that approval. And that gets it to the heart of this, is that we have an administrative approval process right now. That administrative approval process is broken. People, they're going on for administrative approvals. They are not getting administrative approvals, sometimes not even being told that they should be coming to the meeting because they can be pulled off the administrative approval. We are fixing that based on the hard work of the planning board and the HDC. And as I sit here, I'm counting the votes. This thing might not pass, guys, and we're going to be back here trying to figure it out in another year when we can take this up again. That seems like we're letting the perfect get in the way of the good. I hope that we can come to an agreement that this isn't perfect. And if Councillor Cook's disagreeing with Councillor Blaylock and Councillor Bagley, it seems like we're right there in the middle of a good change in this, that we can move it forward just a little bit so that we don't have to have this same consternation and discussion about if they're opposing. They're not. We're making some small improvements so homeowners can act in their best interest if they so choose. And by doing so, we're going to help the environment. We're also going to continue to preserve historic structures because they're going to be minimally visible. And we're going to be able to say what this looks like. And I bet in 3, 5, 10 years, we're going to be just as invisible. And I do want to correct the record on a public speaker who said that, oh no, it was the meeting that I watched on the HDC, driving down Thornton Street, and said it was the ugliest solar panels they'd ever seen. It's my street, guys. It looks great. I actually had to count them up. I think you will never even notice these panels that are on there. There's satellite dishes, there's a lot of stuff out there. And so I'm hoping that we can get the consensus that most people are looking at from the city of Portsmouth to be able to say, we are looking for compromise and we're looking to value more than one thing, and we're going to see how this works, and hopefully more people will get a panel approved. But based on the comments, maybe it doesn't happen tonight, but I hope future votes are more looking to reach compromise. And I'm not going to be cynical and think that the HDC and the planning board came together on these rules just because they knew that they get another bite at them. I think that this is a positive step forward, and I would encourage us to vote for second reading as proposed by Councilor Denton. All right, I guess we'll do a roll call vote.
Okay. Assistant Mayor Kelly.
Yes.
Counselor Tabor.
Yes.
Counselor Cook.
No.
Counselor Denton.
Yes.
Counselor Blaylock.
Yes.
Counselor Bagley.
No.
Counselor Moreau.
No.
Counselor Lombardi.
No.
Mayor McEachran.
Yes.
Passes 5-4.
Thank you.
We're going to take a 10-minute recess. Welcome back, and we will pick up,
Make a motion to suspend the rules, to bring back third and final reading for
on the,
Solar panels.
solar panels, okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there, okay, any discussion? All right, a roll call vote?
Don't we have to suspend the rules first?
Suspending the rules. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any, now, a motion to.
Move to pass third and final reading.
Second.
Any discussion? We will have a roll call vote.
Okay, hold on. Assistant Mayor Kelly.
Yes?
Counselor Tabor.
Yes.
Counselor Cook.
No.
Counselor Denton.
Yes.
Counselor Blaylock.
Yes.
Counselor Bagley.
No.
Counselor Moreau.
No.
Counselor Lombardi.
No.
Mayor McCackron.
Yes. Okay.
Motion
Council Bullock. Next up, we are at the public hearing regarding cable franchise agreement. Public hearing to consider a cable television renewal franchise agreement with Comcast. Franchise agreement, quote the franchise agreement. The proposed franchise agreement is for a 10-year term beginning August 1st, 2024 and ending July 31st, 2034. The proposed franchise agreement allows Comcast to continue to serve existing and new customers without limiting competition. The city would continue to collect a 5% franchise fee.
Your Honor, I had moved to authorize the city manager to finalize and execute the cable television franchise renewal agreement as presented.
Second.
We do have to go through the presentation and see any council questions, and have a public hearing first. But we have a motion on the table. Acting City Manager Woodland, take us away.
So, good evening. So, I have been working with the Cable and Broadband Internet Commission for well over the past year on the renewal of the cable television franchise agreement with Comcast. A public hearing is required, which is why we are going through this exercise it's required under the law. So let me jump right in. The Cable Commission and Rob Capone, the chair, is here this evening. In case there are any questions that I can't answer, he can help chime in. Basically, the Cable Commission did a survey over about a year ago, an informal one. Took some information. Unfortunately, there's a lot. Although we heard a lot of complaints, we had some limited ability to effectuate some of the changes that we'd like. The law simply doesn't allow it. However, at least gave us ability to kind of push back on Comcast recently on some of their service issues, and we're continuing to work on that. So the Cable Commission last month authorized us to come forward to the City Council for renewal of this franchise. So what this franchise agreement does, again, it allows competition. This is not exclusive to Comcast. If we had a competitor willing to enter the market, they could do so. It is a 10-year term beginning August 1st. The current agreement is due to expire. As we have now, it retains the 5% franchise fee that the city currently collects. It provides 2 public access channels, the government channel as well as the PPM TV channel. We do have the Xfinity Comcast store here in Portsmouth that will remain local under the agreement. One other bullet point about what it does cover is we actually put some sustainability language in there. So a lot of the paper that I now receive will come by email in terms of notices. So that is one small, I think, win for the environment. So what this agreement does not cover, it does not regulate customer fees. It does not regulate channel options. We do not regulate the internet options that are available through Xfinity, nor does it regulate the telephone service. That is simply not within our purview under state or federal law. And then just so that everyone understands, we have a franchise fee that we've been collecting for many years, 5% of the gross annual revenues generated from Portsmouth television subscribers. So it's a narrow band of services that are provided to our citizens. Pursuant to a city council policy in 2009, the city records the first $360,000 in general fund and the remainder goes to a trust for the benefit of PPM TV operations. Not surprisingly, the city has seen a decline in these revenues since 2018, so we're still putting $360,000 into the general fund, as we did again this year, but the amount that's flowing over into the trust is lessening as more people cut the cord or get their services differently. So, as I said, the Commission voted June 6th to refer this franchise renewal agreement to the City Council, and it is under the City Manager's action items for approval tonight.
Any questions? I guess I had a couple, maybe for Acting City Manager Woodland or Rob, Chair of the Commission. If the enabling legislation in the federal level or the state level were to change and streaming were to be included or accounted for in this, would this allow for that revenue to be recognized as part of the franchise fee in terms of competition?
So it wouldn't, without kind of actually seeing the language of the.
Sure, contemplating world, but we're going 10 years out and
Right.
can't wait for flying cars and not to have
Right.
to work about parking anymore in
Right.
Portsmouth in that time.
Yeah.
So,
So right now, there are provisions, standard provisions in these agreements that talk about changes in the law.
okay.
So there is some anticipated evolution of that.
Okay. And is there any requirement under the, so we had the council policy in 2009. Is there any change or requirement from, there's two channels, they go to support both of the channels. Is there any requirement if the amount were to drop below, say, the amount, and so that no money was transferred to PPM TV, would that be something that we would have to reconsider, or are we on the policy that we have? Do we have a requirement to send money to PPM TV as a channel provider, since there's two?
There is no requirement. It is a city council policy, which can change with the city council in terms of how much of the funds go into the general fund versus how much you elect, whether it's more or less, to the trust fund that supports PPM TV.
Okay, and what is the two channels then? Who would be if we didn't give any money to PPM TV, who would operate the other channel?
There is no other entity to operate that public access channel. So we would continue to run the government channel, which, we recently were kind of calculating the numbers, the funding that's required to maintain that channel between, supporting the salary of our producer, et cetera. So that was about $220, $230 roughly, is what it takes us right now. But that's not really including legal time or other staff time to kind of administer the contract, if you will. So, from our perspective, that 360 is really kind of covering our time, the back of the house time to administer the contract and rights of way.
Okay.
Along with the government channel and all its associated costs.
But so public access then is not it doesn't, there's nothing in the state statute that requires us to fund a public access channel with this money?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. It is not a requirement. It's really up to, many communities do not have one, but many communities do.
Got it. Okay. Any other questions, the council? Councilor Cook?
Thank you, Your Honor. I just had a question around who regulates an internet-only provider like Fidium Fiber?
Theoretically, at the federal level, Federal Communications Commission.
Councilor Cook?
I just wanted to say one more thing. I wanted to thank Rob for being here tonight, very patiently waiting for us for almost 3 hours to answer any questions that we had. So I really appreciate his volunteer time.
He gets the kudos for staying till nearly 10 o'clock. And so this has nothing to do, though, with PPMTV in terms of the council policy is separate from this action. The council policy of not, or directing 360 to the general fund versus this has nothing to do with this contract. This is contract purely renews the agreement that we have with or Comcast. And so any conversation on that is a separate topic.
That is correct.
Okay. All right.
Oh, let me see.
Oh, that's right. We have public hearing.
Yep.
So we will now open up the public hearing. 2 for, against. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Any more questions or deliberations? All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it. Your watch has ended here.
That was easy, huh?
See you in 10 years, Rob.
2034. My,
Well, 9
wow.
probably.
Daughter will be graduating high school. That is unreal. Okay, city managers items which require action. This was, I guess we had taken this up because we had a motion on the floor that was under the city manager's actions which require action with
Yep.
Councilor Tabor. So we have that one done already. Request for capital improvement plan process kickoff work session.
Your Honor, I move to schedule a work session on Monday, August 19th at 6 p.m. For a kickoff process for the CIP.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Next up, a lease agreement with AIDS response of the Seacoast. Oh, sorry. I'm taking. This is all yours. No. This is. Hold on.
You know, you were doing a great job.
Acting City Manager Woodland.
You know,
Let's we'll start from the top.
No. We're on number 3. You move things along. So we're on to lease agreement with AIDS Response of the Seacoast. So as many of you know, AIDS Response of the Seacoast has been located here in the City Hall Siebold side of the building for many years now. Beginning in August, we will be helping them transition over to new space at Community Campus. Consequently, they needed a new lease. So that is what is before you tonight. I think they are excited to move. The space into which they're moving at Community Campus is being renovated. Consistent with the broader plans we have for Community Campus to kind of move the tenant space around so that it's better organized for our purposes. So I think, given the lateness, I will leave it right there and be happy to answer any questions. You have all of the information in your packet.
Councilor Cook.
I move to authorize the city manager to finalize and execute the lease agreement with AIDS Response in a form similar to what is presented.
Second?
Any discussion? Councilor Lombardi.
I just wonder, is the lease that they have at the community campus comparable to the lease they had when they were here?
It is slightly more per month, but not, they're comfortable with where we've landed in that. It's better, it's going to be better space. So I think they're comfortable. We've had a lot of conversations with them, and we actually have given them, I think, a little 2-month buffer.
Mm-hmm.
So normally they would roll over at the end of September is their end of fiscal year. So we were letting them keep their old rent here until October 1.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councilor Cook.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just had a question about the annual increases. I noticed that they were around 5% a year, which at some point that becomes very difficult to manage for a nonprofit. Is it the intention of the city to continue to increase every year at 5%?
So we've had a lot of conversations about this, and for both our budgeting purposes, because we know that there are going to be some longer-term capital needs for community campus, as well as for theirs. So what we're looking for with all of the leases, because you'll be seeing more of them come forward over the next couple of months, they all will have that 5% escalator, and what we've explained is that 5% is to cover what we already anticipate will be needed capital investments. So we figured we'd build it in, be upfront early. We're looking at longer-term leases so that there's better planning for everyone. And there is some flexibility on the utilities, because obviously utilities are sometimes volatile. So there's language in the leases to deal with upswings, with utility. So, certainly the Public Works Director who helped work on generating these, what we're looking at for rates, and the rates vary amongst the tenants based on how much of the facility that you actually use, because some obviously use it less intensively or more intensively. So Seacoast Aid's Response, for example, uses it less intensively. So they actually have a lower tiered rate. There are 3 tiers, and so they have the lowest tier rate.
One follow-up. I'm curious as to covering costs. I just want to make sure that we're not charging more than what it costs us to cover the cost for usage of that building, noting that all these tenants are nonprofit organizations.
Yeah, Peter Rice would be happy to speak to that, but I know we've been I don't want to say conservative, because you have to figure out which way, but we've tried to be responsible with the taxpayer money, but sensitive to the fact that we are serving nonprofits. So we've tried to kind of find that path through, like in terms of level of janitorial services and things like that, that we know there are going to be increases because it's labor, and finding that middle path. So we've had a lot of discussions about that. So if you need more detail, I'm sure Peter could speak to it, but we've tried to be mindful of being a good steward for the nonprofits.
I guess, and my last question is, I know that all the other contracts are also going to be coming up for consideration. Are we looking at 5-year leases as well?
5, and I think possibly 10, as I recall, for the school. Not Lister, but the Seacoast Community School, because they've asked for a longer term with a renewal, so that they have, again, that planning possibility is helpful for them in terms of forecasting and deciding how to use classrooms. And so.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Okay, next up, we have a sidewalk and traffic easement from St. John's Masonic Association. So back in 2007, I drafted a small easement from St. John's Masonic Association for a little sidewalk and traffic signal easement. That is now not sufficient for our current purposes for traffic signals. So you have before you tonight a new easement document that we would like to get your approval on. I'll stop there.
Your Honor, I motion to accept and authorize the city manager to execute the sidewalk and traffic signal easement deed with St. John's Masonic Association to enlarge an existing easement area at the corner of Miller Avenue and Middle Street for a traffic signal light as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, nice. Oh, Councilor Lombardi.
I do have a question. When they redid the Cabot-Islington Street intersection, they have so many lights there that I was really surprised at the quantity of traffic lights. Are they going to do that on Middle Street too?
I would ask the Public Works Director to talk about traffic lights.
Good evening again. Peter Rice, Director of Public Works. I don't recall the exact number, but it is going to be equally visible. So the intent is to be able to see them, and the challenge on the Cabot intersection was that many times lights were not visible, so they have to be right up front and visible. So I believe there may, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's comparable, and it may actually be more given the fact that it's a bigger intersection. So
Busier street.
Busier street.
Yeah. I mean, both ways.
Correct.
That's what surprised me about Cabot Street. Doesn't have the traffic flow that.
Well, you'd be surprised. Actually, Cabot Street has quite a bit of traffic. It's a major signalized intersection in terms of getting onto Islington in a safe manner.
Yeah.
A lot of the side streets are challenging because of poor visibility.
Thank you.
Councilor Lombardi, any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Okay, next item, authorization to trade vehicles and equipment. The Department of Public Works has identified some vehicles and equipment, and we would like to use them as trade-ins. We think we'll actually get more value out of them rather than putting them out to auction through various sources. So we're looking for your approval to be able to take that step to dispose of them through trade-in.
Your Honor, I move to authorize the Department of Public Works to dispose of the used vehicles identified through the trade and process as described.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Moreau?
I'm just curious if we have an idea about the amount of difference that we've estimated between trade-in to outright sale. Sorry.
Yeah, it's listed in the packet of what the.
I only saw the
trade-in
purchase
value.
price and the trade-in values.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, you're looking at the
just-
delta between what the auction versus the.
Yes.
The benefit for us a lot of times is having a known dollar value instead of, hoping on a certain amount. Typically, we've seen the auctions not generating the dollar value we want, and oftentimes we do what's called trade bait, where a vendor or somebody that's selling the new vehicle to us is interested in the used vehicles because oftentimes other municipalities are interested, so they'll give us more than the auction would. And we found that it's worked to our advantage. You all approved this last year, and we just come, similar to the auctioning, requesting a surplus, being able to dispose of surplus inventory or surplus materials. We need to come to you annually to ask for this.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Cook? Peter, I don't
Thank you,
think you
Your
can go
Honor.
too far.
I'm going to ask my annual question that I ask every year about electric vehicles. There have been lots of improvements in heavier trucks. Have we seen any opportunity to upgrade some of these to electric?
There are opportunities. They are very expensive still. And the utility on these larger vehicles, which is the ones that we would be using more frequently, the cost of an electric street sweeper, for example, is more than twice the cost of a gas-powered internal combustion sweeper. So the larger vehicles are likely not going to be there in the near term. And, we look at the life cycle cost of vehicles, and we see the types of vehicles that are really useful to us. And at this point, we don't feel a lot of the vehicles that we purchase are appropriate for electric. Some of the sedans could still be, transitioned over. If a vehicle, if I get it, my vehicle rolls over, it would make sense for me to have an electric vehicle. But it's still a matter of, vehicles that are used a lot. Those are the ones that are the most cost effective.
Thank you. I'll keep asking every year. I know that we'll just keep hoping the improvements get made to these vehicles, that we get to a point where it's cost effective.
Sure.
So.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, City Manager. On to the consent agenda.
Just do it.
I just wait a motion to adopt it.
Move to adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Next, presentation and written communications. First, email correspondence.
I move to accept and place on file.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, information provided by Joe Calderola regarding guidelines for solar energy and renewable energy.
Your Honor, I motion to accept and place on file.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Honor, if I
Oh,
could-
sorry.
Ooh, that went by fast. I did want to address Joe Calderola's letter. It's a great letter. He's done an in-depth look at renewable energy credits he as a homeowner gets, and those are the underpinning of the green options in community power. So I just wanted to take a moment to address that. what Joe says in his letter is correct, that the power you get from the grid is the power you buy, and it's 23% renewable. But if you opt up to the higher green levels, you're buying, and importantly, you can claim green energy generation on the grid. And Councilor Cook touched on this. The RECs directly support more renewable energy generation in a proportion of 1 REC for every megawatt hour of renewable generation. And the purchase of the RECs, when people opt up, means no one else can claim the support for that renewable generation. So the more support, the higher demand for renewable generation, and at the scale that the Community Power Coalition is now operating, with 35% of the households in the state, they're buying up a lot of RECs, which creates a need for more renewable generation to create more RECs. So it's a virtuous circle, and they're used all the time by entities like Google or airlines to offset carbon emissions. They count in our measurement of carbon reduction, as they do for other towns and cities. And our Energy Advisory Committee really wanted to be clear about these before promoting opting out. And I think there's good news in the future. The Coalition for Community Power in New Hampshire is working to buy renewables directly. They just bought their first solar energy contract in the state. And they're going to be doing more of that. And they continue to want to get more green electrons into the options that you have for your power. So lastly, they're going to develop environmental disclosure labels for each of the products that'll help a buyer quantify the emissions difference between, say, the base power and 50% clean or clean 100. So that's all in the works. And the RECs actually do make a big difference. As much as 20 or 30% of the value of a big project, as opposed to Joe as a homeowner, where it's 5 or 6%. So, and I'll send this to Joe, but it really, it was a valuable letter because it made us really have to examine all of this.
That's great. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Councilor Tabor. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, next, a letter from Curtis Herman, New Hampshire Sons of the American Revolution, requesting permission to hold the commemoration of the bicentennial anniversary of General Lafayette's visit on Sunday, September 1st, 2024.
Your Honor, I move to refer to the city manager with authority to act.
Second?
We will celebrate the hero of two worlds. All in favor? Aye. All right. A letter from Elizabeth Bratter requesting if any city lands surrounding 361 Hanover Street are asked to be used or purchased by any of 361 Hanover Street entities, please require a public hearing and notification of abutters by certified mail of what is being proposed and public comment for consideration of the proposal.
Move and accept to place on file.
Second.
Just a quick question on this. If we, like, this is the old Heinemann building. If there's anything that would be required, like in terms of any request or any consideration of a land thing, this would come before the city council. Is it standard practice to alert abutters of this via certified mail if it were?
Generally, no.
Generally, no. Okay, so this
But
is.
that doesn't mean that we don't sometimes, reach out when we know they're interested parties. I can't promise, but I know it goes through it goes to the planning board for referral and, any interest of land that gets conveyed or accepted. So there is process around it.
Okay, so require a public hearing. This would require a public hearing or no? It doesn't require a public hearing if we were to.
Not if you're not buying
Oh,
land.
if we're buying.
land.
Right.
Okay. So if we get anything, so it will require a vote of the council, but it's not practice to have a public hearing at the council level. Would there be, there would be one at the planning board level if this was a part of a project? I'm looking at Councilor Moreau.
Site plan, it would definitely have site plan
Okay.
public hearing at site plan review, which would include, if there was any city-owned land, would include the fact that they would be trying to lease under certain terms or whatnot. So-
Okay. Thank you. All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We've made it to the council. We got 17 minutes. 10:30, and I know that Councilor or Assistant Mayor Kelly is a no vote on going past 10:30.
Coming home, Chris.
All right, appointments to be voted. We have the appointment of Andrew Simonis as the Planning Board Representative to the Housing Committee, the appointment of Mary Carey Foley to the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Sister City Committee, appointment of Robert F. Connard Jr. to the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Sister City Committee.
Your Honor, I move to appoint Andrew Simonis as the Planning Board Representative to the Housing Committee, Mary Carey Foley and Robert F. Connard Jr. to the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Sister City Committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for your upcoming service. Sad to receive the resignation of Chuck Ray from the Citywide Neighborhood Committee.
Your Honor, I move to accept with regret the resignation of Chuck Ray from the Citywide Neighborhood Committee with a letter of thanks and appreciation for his service to the city.
Second.
Certainly echoed. All in favor? Aye. Now, if it was earlier in the hour, I was going to give like a 30 to 45 minute verbal report on this, but I'm just going to stick with, had a meeting with Dr. Linus Kenter. He was from the Sea Grant organization. He's a doctor in aquaculture and fisheries at a UNH that's funded by the Sea Grant. Came with a pretty interesting idea of whether or not we could host oyster farms from a community standpoint, either in the north or south Mill Pond. So would like to get a report back on, and I'd await a motion if we could get a report back on funding opportunities for oyster farms in the bodies of water in the contiguous city of Portsmouth.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
Your Honor, I think that this is a wonderful idea. My uncle participates in the oyster program, but in the Swampscott River. And they've had a very successful time participating in that. They do it along several docks to test where the water is best for oyster production. So
Yeah, I was shocked that they can't like live, year round in the mill pond in the wintertime, but the mill ponds they could survive as the tide goes all the way out. They're not too concerned on the what actually goes into those ponds, and they're always going to be cleaning them in a productive manner that could. I think I was talking to Acting City Manager Woodland, and she said that, or mentioned that as a part of the early conversations with the EPA, we were part funder of this, bless you, earlier on the Sea Grant program, so it'd be cool to see if we could actually make this happen. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
And Councilor Cook.
Thank you, Your Honor. You will have seen in your packet the single-use food serviceware reduction or skip the stuff policy. I would like to move to adopt the single-use serviceware or skip the stuff policy.
Second.
And as a council, this is something that we have seen before. I first introduced it as an ordinance, and then we went to legal to get advice, and we altered it at that point to make it into a policy instead of an ordinance, simply because enforcement would be challenging. And really, we want to focus on education and getting people to understand in the community how important it is to not take that extra serviceware if you don't need it. And helping our restaurants also understand the value and the money they can save by not automatically handing out serviceware. So then the policy went to the Sustainability Committee, and thanks to Councilor Denton for shepherding it there through the committee process. And they had some amendments, and the legal department also had a few more, and it comes back to you in final form with their amendments. So.
Great job. Really appreciate all of the, Portsmouth appreciates all the hard work on this, and from an education standpoint, just being reminded not to do it. It sounds good. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Still you, Councilor Cook.
I know, one more. Your Honor, I'd like to move to schedule a work session with the Market Square Master Plan consultants and city staff to discuss progress on planning and provide city council input to the process.
Second.
I'm just asking for this report back because the council initially had asked for the expansion of the Market Square redesign planning process, and that process started last spring with one public input session. I know that several of us were out of town. It happened to be spring break, so we couldn't participate in that session. And so I wanted to make sure that we saw this at the council level and were able to share input from the council before we get to final stages of planning. I think it's always more difficult when you get further along and you haven't provided input to the process. I'd hate to have to duplicate efforts.
Then there's a second, so there's a second, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Councilor Moreau.
I just think it would be nice to have this work session and just get an update as to what feedback they have been hearing, the direction that they're thinking about, just so we can weigh in on where everything's going and be on top of it. I think it's important.
And there's no date certain, but we'll work with city staff to provide that, and obviously the consultants. We can't just tell them when. Got to work on that. All right.
Yeah, Your Honor, I didn't want to guess on dates, knowing that we had another work session that we were scheduling tonight, and August, summer's difficult, so I wanted to
Certainly
make
is.
sure we could work with the schedules the city has.
Excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Councilor Cook, thank you. Councilor Blaylock.
Thank you, Your Honor. So the sister city, we've been looking to try to start a trust fund. I know we do have the Ambassadors Trust Fund, and that is included in the packet. So I guess I'll make my motion first. Move to request that the legal department report back with a recommendation.
Second.
And so, I mean, we started, Bob Sullivan, who's actually on our committee, wrote the language for the Ambassadors Trust Fund. He didn't feel like that kind of covered the umbrella that we were looking to cover. The trust fund, Ambassadors Trust Fund, was originally written for Eileen Foley, and she was the ambassador. We don't have an ambassador. We don't have a process to vote an ambassador. So we didn't think the Ambassadors Trust Fund was the best answer to our, however, the Sister City Committee wants to, we want to be able to throw an event or give gifts to a visitor from one of our sister cities without having to pay taxpayer money. So we were hoping to request the support of the City Council to draft the necessary documents to create a Sister Cities Trust Fund to be administered by the trustees of the Trust Fund. The purpose of the fund would be to serve in the interest of sustaining the City of Portsmouth's formal Sister Cities relationship and conducting appropriate activities without taxpayer expense. The fund would allow the public to make tax-deductible donations in support of efforts on behalf of current and future sister and friendship cities by the City of Portsmouth.
Great. Any other comments other than me saying great? Oh, no, sorry. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Councilor Blaylock. Councilor Bagley.
Your Honor, I move to approve and accept the action sheet and minutes of the June 6, 2024 Parking Traffic Safety Committee meeting.
Second.
And just to briefly speak to it, we have one taxi stand left, but no taxi medallions out there, so we're going to convert that to regular parking. If we were to get taxi medallions again, we would go back and have a taxi stand.
Glad we did this back.
And then we did have initial discussions, and we're going to report back on whether or not Zipcar or something like Zipcar would be viable, which is like a car share service that would primarily be used by residents downtown with the aim that maybe they wouldn't need to have two cars or one car. And then we're moving one of the 15-minute, there's two 15-minute spaces near Bank Prov. We're moving one of those up to be closer to where Legends and 110 Grill. I can't think of the names. There's like 4 restaurants there.
Yep.
So we thought, okay, well, the bank has 2, the restaurants have none. This would be a little more equitable arrangement of the 15-minute spaces.
Great. Oh, so, okay, from that side of the street to the other side of the street.
No, so they're down by the corner of Maplewood.
Near the
There's
old
2
cage.
right on the
Bananas.
corner.
Yeah, those are-
And one of them's going to move up
Oh, next to Shalimar.
50 feet.
So,
Shalimar.
yeah,
That's what I was trying to take that.
That's great.
Let's have an mental block.
Just
Yeah.
make the cannonball
Shalimar,
around
Lockretta.
in that quasi-loading zone. Excellent. That seems like a great idea. All right.
I think
Counselor Cook.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say thank you to the Parking and Traffic Safety Committee for considering that, because that is the spot where I always see cars parked with their flashing lights on getting takeout.
Yeah.
So this is a very wise decision.
Yeah, great. All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No grants or donations this evening. And City Manager, any informational items?
Yes, we have a community policing facility update, which Peter Rice will give us.
So, the update is that we're grinding along, trying to put together some stuff to come back and be ready for to present to you all. We have, as I said last time, we have been focusing on the back portion of the building, trying to get as much as possible out of the front. We're looking at the possibility of some infill in some areas so you don't visually see it from across the pond, but it's some space outside the front of the building that potentially could be expanded into. So we're looking at the adjacency diagrams associated with those changes to make sure they function in the way the police need. And there's some interesting ideas that are coming out of it. They're not ready to be rolled out because we haven't vetted them fully, but we're hoping to present to the working group towards the end of August with the thought that sometimes in September we might be able to come back to you. The process has been very informative along the way. We've met with a number of residents and we've gotten a lot of feedback from folks relative to what they value on this site and what we'd like to see here, or not see, more specifically. We are making progress. Projects like this are time-consuming. They do take a lot of coordination between different entities, and there's this dynamic between the want and then the need, and then we are constantly making adjustments to try to make sure we're cognizant of your goals, stay within budget, minimize the visual impacts, and reuse the existing building as much as possible. So that process is continuing. We've also solicited proposals from 3 firms to do a staffing needs assessment. This would update the previous ones that have been done, and would give the council a better feeling for what the modern policing needs are and how they fit within the proposed space needs assessment. So,
great. Thank you, Peter. Any questions? No, just note that if there was, we do appreciate, and the public does, to be able to, if not watching tonight live on Channel 22 or catching up, after going out to Prescott Park and watching it 2x speed through the entire YouTube, if there's going to be a substantial update, we will have this at the beginning or close to the beginning of a meeting, so folks don't have to tune in, but it is great that we are getting these updates on every meeting at the end of the evening. We do appreciate them.
It's some of the feedback that I've received is there's concern that decisions are being made without public being informed.
Yeah.
It is not our intent to do that. A lot of the work that is done in the the working groups and in staff groups are a lot of push and pull to get to the point where we can bring decisions to you all and we can have those public presentations. So.
Yeah. I think we got a lot of feedback last time we poked our head, up on that, and so now we're working on making sure that next
what
time
we wanted.
Can be better. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Peter.
Good. Brief update with regard to the Sherburne property. As you know, we went out for requests for qualifications, letters of interest for the Sherburne school site. We got 8 proposals. Those proposals you can see on the city's website. Currently, there is a selection committee consisting of 8 staff members who have reviewed those proposals, have ranked them. We are in the process of interviewing right now the 4 top-ranked firms. Those interviews are happening this week. And our intention is to gather as much information as possible from the interview process so that we can have a conversation with the City Council on August 5th at your next City Council meeting.
My birthday.
and say, here's what we've learned, and here's our recommended next steps, given what we've learned. So that maybe to issue an RFP with certain parameters, and that's what we're trying to do, is figure out how do we help frame for you, the city council, what you want those parameters to be, so that no one's time is wasted going through a process that isn't going to deliver some proposal that is going to be of interest to the city council. And it could be more than one proposal. So this is where we are right now, so just wanted to give you that brief update on the process.
Thanks, City Manager. Oh, Councilor Morano.
We're allowed to ask questions?
Sir, we're going to need a motion quickly, though, guys.
Soon.
120 seconds.
All right. So will it be the August 5th date that we find out who the 4 finalists were that are getting interviewed?
It has not yet been determined whether it would make sense to share that information right now. We're in the gathering phase literally this week, and then after we finish those interviews, we're going to sit down, see what we learned, and then make a recommendation to you.
As you can imagine, we get that question a lot on
Yes,
Housing
and
Committee.
so right now, because
Housing
of the
Committee every day.
competitive nature of the process, and we don't even know, we might want to interview the other firms as well. So that's why it's step 1, and why we're sharing a lot, but we're not sharing everything right now, but everything does become public once we're kind of further down along this process. So,
thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we good? Okay.
South Meeting House?
Yep, South Meeting House. So the request for proposals is out on the street. Proposals are due July 7th. We did have 2 open houses to bring.
August 7th, right?
August, sorry.
Because that was
Sorry.
last week.
All right, no laughing, guys. We got like 3 seconds here.
Actually, maybe I wrote the wrong number.
I think it's July 17th.
July 17th.
This
Yeah, I was going to
Wednesday
say,
at
I know
noon.
it's not August. Okay, so I forgot the one. All right, thank you, July 17th. Yes, so we had some good turnout for the open houses that we did. So we had some interested parties come through. So thanks to Joe Alameda, the Public Works Department, for taking folks through. So fingers crossed, we may have more to report back at the August 5th meeting on that. Finally, the hazard mitigation plan update. So you see in your packet, there's a very extensive draft hazard mitigation plan. It's something we're required to update on a regular basis. We needed to get this in the agenda tonight so that we could really make it clear that we're looking for public comment over the next 2 weeks, because there is a public comment component. And so there's information in the packet that feedback from members of the council and the public can be sent directly to the fire chief at his email or via phone. And because it's late, I'm going to stop there. So there's no action required of you tonight, but you will be seeing this back for action at a later date.
Quick question. When I read through that, it's an impressive document, but one omission was, in light of the derailment of the train and right downtown, and the fact that some transport is unscented propane, I would think that would be something that could be addressed in that.
I'll mention that comment to the fire chief.
I was already going to email him about it.
Your Honor,
You did?
I was going to email him.
I was also noticing that in the priorities, the Junkins Avenue Bridge is mentioned as a flooding hazard, but I went back to we got the Rockingham County Planning Commission's analysis of all of the roadways that are in jeopardy, and they rank equally as high the Sagamore Creek Bridge down near the Bratskeller, which actually has more consequence if you think of 25,000 cars a day would have to be rerouted to Beverly Hill Road, which can't handle that capacity.
All right.
Let's start a ferry.
All right. I had one under miscellaneous and then one other. So I'd like to just call out the attention that Genevieve Alshley, Artist Laureate, she's now the state's. So congratulations to our own Jen Alshley, whom the governor Council appointed as New Hampshire's new artist laureate last month when Jen stepped down last year after 35 years as founding executive director of the New Hampshire Theater Project. We had front row seats secure knowing that she was not stepping away. She was easy to find right here as a member of the Arts and Nonprofits Committee for the past 2 years. She shared her experience and passion in helping to shape the city's new cultural plan, and as a tireless champion of the arts, she helped shepherd the Americans for the Arts Economic Impact Study that showed that the arts organizations and their audience in Greater Portsmouth contribute more than $70.2 million to our local economy and $3.3 billion to the state. That too showed us that Jen will always be stepping forward on behalf of her beloved theater, arts organization, and artists of all kinds. We know we will continue to gain from her priceless insight when focused on community, the opportunities for educational theater and the theater for social justice that make a difference in people's lives are boundless. Continue to create conversations, educate, and train. Jen will be here in the theater seats and on the sidewalk cheering you on. Congratulations, Jen. We're so appreciative. And I would like to also just extend congratulations. I don't know if the assistant mayor is going to kill me or not, but she got engaged over the weekend. So this is just not a ploy to try to get on the invite list for that. But we're all really excited for you and Chris. Couldn't be a better match. So appreciate it. Yeah, just thanks. All right. Councilor Blaylock.
The Little League All-Stars 10-year-old team, 11-year-old team, and 12-year-old team have all gone 5-1 in their district All-Star play, and they're all heading into the playoffs to win their district. So I wish them best of luck this week.
Hey,
but
congrats.
Yeah.
All right. All right. We had a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night, Portsmouth.